From abandoned to unstoppable.
Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei Was Abandoned and Became Immortal God of Martial Arts movie. Before we start, please go support NormaElementruWolf for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistaken character's gender, but of course Issei is a male. After being forgotten and abandoned by his family and supernatural beings and exiled to a void dimension, unaware that it would lead him to another world, his life will change. He will go from being a human to a follower of an underworld deity to becoming an immortal god of martial arts and energy cultivation. But he doesn't want titles or merits and only wishes to live in peace as a humble person. However, the past, as well as other people, will want his help and to share his wisdom with new generations. What adventures and problems will our favorite chestnut-haired boy have along the way? Prologue. Falling into the abyss and a new world and a new life. A small brown-haired boy could be seen, battered and covered in scars and marks of immense torture for a child his age. His gaze was empty, filled with the pain of an innocent child. He was also malnourished from lack of food. His skin was pale from so long without sunlight. He looked like a corpse. His clothes were old, torn, with holes, dirty, and tattered. His entire body was covered in scars, burns, and bruises. He was dragged by chains on his wrists, feet, and neck in a desolate place. The beings dragging him as if he were insignificant trash were supernatural beings of all kinds. Demons, fallen angels, Asgardians, and others from different factions. The gods looked at the little boy as if he were a waste of air, as did the others who were dying to be rid of him. His brothers and sisters looked at him like insignificant trash, his parents saw him as a mistake, and others looked at him with disdain, showing him no mercy. Some young people, much older than he should have been, watched with mockery and satisfaction at what was happening to him, as if his suffering were entertainment for them. The portal opened, red, black, and adorned with stars. Without a shred of mercy, they hurled the child into the abyss. The silhouettes of these beings vanished before the child's eyes, who no longer knew why he wanted to live. He simply closed his eyes, hoping it would all end once and for all. But elsewhere, in the immense darkness, a woman's gaze was visible. Her intense amethyst eyes, cold yet inquisitive, gazed intently at the small chestnut-haired boy floating in the void of the abyss. Woman. Well. It's a shame such a young soul ended up like this, but that degree of purity and darkness together is very interesting. You have great potential, little one. It will be very interesting to see what you do later on. I will send you to one of my domains. You will live as a normal human again. But one day our paths will cross again, my future follower. I hope to see you again. His eyes glowed, then a portal seemed to pull the small chestnut-haired boy into the woodwork. He emerged in a strange forest, still asleep. He awoke, unsure why he was there, but thought any place was better than being with supernatural beings. He couldn't quite grasp what kind of forest it was. Having spent so much time with the supernatural, he could discern the energies of the place, and this forest held a great deal of pure energy. The senjutsu of those Nekamatas was greater. Their energy was pure, something they didn't understand. But he was there, but his stomach growled with hunger, and he saw a blue apple. He didn't know if it was edible, but hunger was stronger than logic. The little one climbed the tree as best he could with his little strength, took one of the apples, and ate it with relish, feeling something different in his body. But then, after eating some strange blue apples, he climbed down the tree and walked for a long time, until he reached a lake with crystal clear water. He drank it because he was very thirsty, and his wounds gradually healed without him even noticing. He walked a little further from there and suddenly bumped into an invisible wall. But for some strange reason, he appeared in a forest that was more ordinary than before. While wandering around, he was found showing signs of advanced age, though not by much. He seemed to be in good shape. Regardless of his age, the man killed a strange animal that resembled a purple and white bear. Parts of its body were covered in black and purple scale armor, and it had a long, lizard-like tail and phosphorescent purple eyes with sharp claws. From its body sprang rays of light. The little chestnut-haired boy saw the man kill the bear. He was surprised because the bear was 5 meters long. It was very large and dangerous. The man saw the boy and was surprised, wondering what a child was doing there alone in the forest. Sir. Hey little one, how do you hear flames? What are you doing here alone in this forest? Issei. Issei is my name, sir, and I don't know, I just ended up here. The man thought the boy must be lost, so he took him to his house, a cabin in the woods near a village, since he couldn't understand how a 7-year-old boy could be lost in the woods, such a dangerous place. Chapter 1. A New Life and Knowing My Power. Now with our little protagonist and in the cabin of the man who helped him get out of the forest, although the little chestnut tree did not know how it ended up in this world, if it should be floating in the abyss. Issei, and what is your name, sir? Sir. My name is Roral Pequeno, and I am an iron rank adventurer. Issei. Adventurer, what's that? Oral. An adventurer is someone who undertakes missions to earn a living and money while also helping others. Depending on your rank. The mission will vary in its danger and complexity. There are many ranks, the highest being the A rank Diamantiu. There are also other ranks like S-class or Black Diamond, which are the most powerful. The higher the symbols, like 2 S's or 2 Black Diamonds, the higher your rank will be. You can also complete missions outside your kingdom, in another kingdom. These missions are given by guilds in other kingdoms. Issei. That's interesting and amazing, sir, but what is a guild? Oral. Guilds are where adventurers can find work by completing quests to earn money. They can also stay at the guild, eat there, buy equipment, and sell items they've acquired on quests. There are all sorts of adventurers, from knights, samurai, ninjas, thieves, swordsmen, mages, martial artists, paladins, and more. The little boy was very surprised and interested in that. Oral. And how did you end up alone in the forest? Issei. I just happened and I don't remember much else. I only remember some people who did bad things to me and I ended up here. Oral was serious upon hearing that. It was possible the boy had been a slave and escaped. And because of the things they did to him, he might have lost his memory, which is why he didn't know how he ended up in that forest. But he was pulled from his thoughts by the chestnut-haired man's voice. Issei. Do you think he could have been an adventurer? Oral. Are you sure, Issei? It's a serious job that could even cost you your life sometimes. He said it with a serious tone in his voice because something like that couldn't be taken lightly. Issei. Yes, I'm very sure, and it can also help me defend myself. I already want to protect them. He said it with conviction in his words. Oral was surprised because he didn't expect such a small child to have so much determination. Oral. Alright Issei, I'll train you so you know how to defend yourself. After that, you can join the guild and become an adventurer. I'll just tell you, the training won't be easy. Are you sure you can handle it? Issei. Yes, I'm sure of that, Mr. Oral. Besides, I'd like to know if I have magic or any special energy. Oral. Well, I'll just say that some don't possess magic, so don't be discouraged if you don't have magic or other energy. You could still train your physique and become a knight or something else that has nothing to do with magical or spiritual energies. Issei. Okay, Mr. Oral, I understand. And how do I know if I have magic or spiritual energy? Oral. That can be determined with the sphere of magna. If it shines depending on the color, it will indicate the type of element you possess in magic or spiritual art. There aren't many who have more than 4 elements. Issei. So I just put my hand there and I'll be able to see if I have magic or not. Oral. If you're not afraid, even if you don't have magic or spiritual energy, that's okay. You can be good at other things, like the ones I already told you about. That's fine. The chestnut-haired man nodded and did as asked, placing his hand on the sphere, seeing a white glow that then turned into a multitude of colors like a rainbow. Oral's mouth was open. She didn't expect the chestnut-haired man to have all the elements. This was something unique and special, something that would only be seen once in a lifetime. Oral. But how is this possible? Issei. Mr. Oral, did I do something wrong? Oral. No, Issei, I was just surprised because you're the only one I've seen whose energy contains all the elements. You have magic and spiritual energy because you possess all the elements. Issei. Seriously, it's awesome. Oral. Now, Issei, show your palm and release your energy, in the form of a small sphere, it could be the size of an apple. The little boy nodded and extended his hand. In his palm appeared a kind of energy ring of all colors. Issei. Wow, that's amazing. Look, Mr. Oral, I did it. The little chestnut-haired boy said excitedly. Oral stood with his jaw agape, unable to believe what he was seeing. It was already amazing how he could combine all the energies perfectly, creating that ring. He thought Issei was even more special than he already knew. Oral. Well done, Issei, you're amazing. But it means your training will be harder if you have to learn to control every element, you understand? Issei. I understand it won't be easy, but I'm willing to give it my all. Oral. That's the attitude, little one. Good, your training will start tomorrow. The little boy nodded happily after eating a bear stew for dinner. Issei fell asleep wondering what kind of adventures and challenges awaited him in this new world. But he knew he could overcome any challenge that came his way. No one was holding back his now unleashed potential. A year later, Issei, now 8 years old, wore brown clothes with black parasols and a long-sleeved black shirt with gold details, along with brown boots and bandages on his ankles. He had a brown belt that allowed him to carry a small wooden sword. He was standing on the roof of a house looking out over the city. During this time, Oral made him train hard and with the help of some old friends, they trained him in the other elements. Oral focused on combat and agility, strengthening Issei's body so he could control his elements, as well as teaching him meditation, telling him that strength isn't everything. With some elves he taught him to master the wind and nature, with a dark wizard he taught him to master the darkness, with some knights he learned to better polish his sword techniques, even though he only used one sword, being a small child. With the cleric, he learned to use the light element, and likewise, other adventurer friends of Roral taught him to master their other elements. Although his level wasn't very high, he could defend himself. Also in this year, Roral adopted Issei as his son, and Issei considered Roral his master and father. Issei told her that upon arriving at the forest where he found him, he had eaten some strange blue apples and drunk water from a strange lake. Roral was even more surprised to hear how the chestnut-haired boy described the place and the things he saw. Roral. Issei, you were in one of the spiritual realms that only a very few can access, being great warriors or servants of a god. The fruit you tasted is the Magna apple. It strengthens the body, making it easier to awaken spiritual energy within a living being and strengthening your body from within. The water is sacred. With just a sip, it can grant immortality, awaken hidden spiritual and magical abilities within your body, and heal wounds and illnesses. It is like a source of the god's immortality, a place no mortal can access without the permission of a god. Issei. And how can I be sure that I'm immortal? Roral. You should see if the wound isn't too deep and if it regenerates. We'll see if that's true or not. If it doesn't work, you can heal yourself with a healing spell, okay? The little boy nodded and made a small cut on a sharp-pointed stone, which hurt a little, and a trickle of blood came out of his hand. Roral was about to heal him when he saw nothing was wrong, but then smoke appeared to rise from Issei's wound, and the wound healed instantly, as did the blood on his hand. Roral was surprised to see that the little boy was now immortal. And he didn't know how the little boy had managed to get into one of the spiritual realms without a god's permission and without any consequences. Issei. If I'm immortal now, it means I'll stay a kid forever. The little boy comically panicked as he didn't want to be a child forever. No one would take him seriously and no one would believe that such a small child could be immortal. He didn't want to be a dwarf for his entire life, running around the cabin in a panic, saying, I'll be a 7-year-old for eternity. Roral calmed him down, telling him that it was possible he could be a complete immortal until he came of age, not a child forever, which calmed the brunette somewhat. He didn't want to be immortal while always looking like a child. After things calmed down, Roral told Issei to promise that only he would know that he was immortal, since if others knew it, they could cause problems for the brunette and hurt him, and the little one nodded that he would not tell anyone. That's what Issei did throughout a year of his training. Chapter 2 Becoming an Adventurer. Returning to our protagonist, the little chestnut-haired boy has grown up. 6 years have passed since he arrived in that world, and he is now 13 years old. In that time, he has learned many magic spells and special techniques. Roral also taught him sword techniques, and like other knights and swordsmen, he learned to refine his skills since he couldn't rely solely on his magic. Just as he possessed many elements, his mastery was greatest with the elements of darkness and fire. He became a crimson mage, and he learned many things, from creating magical positions and artifacts to aids. He also frequently went to the forest with Roral, who was now his father, and Issei was happy to have a father who truly loved him. Before arriving in this world, supernatural beings had erased his memory of what they had done to him. He only remembers what they did to him when he was a child. He only remembers 2 brown-haired people who were never his real parents, and now he had a real father. Roral also taught Issei to be self-reliant, as well as how to cook and hunt his own food and do other things. It was a new day in a cabin in the forest, and a chestnut-haired man woke up and went downstairs for breakfast. Issei, good morning Dad. How did you sleep? I greeted my father, who was having breakfast while reading the newspaper. Roral. Hi son, I slept well, and you? Issei. I slept well. The chestnut tree sat down to breakfast. Roral. Remember, Issei, today is the day you go to the guild to register, since you've already finished your training. Issei. Yes, father, I'm very excited. I'll finally be an adventurer. Roral. You'll be the first to do it at 13. You're quite young to be an adventurer, but your skills show otherwise. I became an adventurer years ago at 19. But I'm proud of what you've accomplished in this time. Issei. It's thanks to you, father. You took care of me since I was a little boy you found in the forest. And you loved me like your own son, even though I wasn't your blood. I don't know what would have become of me if you hadn't been there in the forest that day when you found me. You gave me a home, food, your care, and your teachings. Roral's heart skipped a beat as he heard his son's touching words. Roral stood up and hugged Issei, who returned his father's embrace. Regardless of their gender, they were family, and that was what mattered to him. After breakfast, Issei gathered his things, said goodbye to his father, and headed to the city. He began leaping through the trees, using a displacement spell to propel himself forward and reach the city faster. He walked through the town greeting everyone, as they all knew him because he was Roral's adopted son. Just like Issei, he had helped the townspeople by doing good deeds until he arrived at the guild. Upon entering, some of the adventurers greeted him, either because they knew Roral or because they had helped Issei with his training. He made his way to the guild's reception area. He spoke to the receptionist to ask for assistance. She approached him to see what the brunette needed. The receptionist was a 19-year-old brunette with blue eyes. Receptionist. Hello young man, I'm Natalie, the receptionist for the trade. How can I help you? Issei. Hello, I'm Issei and I've come to register with the guild as an adventurer. Those who didn't know Issei, a small group, were calm knowing the young man was coming, but they didn't laugh when they heard that someone so young and inexperienced wanted to be an adventurer. Issei heard the laughter and didn't pay it any mind, which annoyed some of them when they saw he ignored them. Adventurer 1. Hahaha, kid, don't make me laugh. This isn't a place for games. This is a serious place. Adventurer. If you're a kid, you'd better go play somewhere else. And so, more comments arose. Some said he was very handsome for his age, devouring him with their eyes. Others said he was crazy to be an adventurer at such a young age, without any experience in the field, or they thought he was playing a bad joke. Issei. I'm not a little kid. I came here to be an adventurer, and I'm doing it. This isn't a joke, and I certainly didn't come here to play around. If what I'm doing bothers you, it's best to stay out of my business. It's my decision whether I want to be an adventurer or not, and my appearance and age don't define me as one. My skills and knowledge do. He said it seriously, arms crossed, not letting himself be intimidated by the negative opinions and comments of the other adventurers, several of whom were annoyed by the arrogant attitude of the chestnut-haired man, according to them. Natalie. If you're sure you want to be an adventurer, I need you to tell me from your personal information that you agree with that. The chestnut-haired man nodded and accepted the registration form and began to fill it out with his personal information before handing it to Natalie a little while later. Natalie. Okay, everything's fine. I'll give you 2 tests. One on basic knowledge that every adventurer should know and the other will be a practical test that the guild leader will give. Okay. Issei. That's fine, I have no problem with that. The receptionist took him to a special room where he would take the first simple test, a basic knowledge test covering math, sense of direction, and knowledge of both medicinal and poisonous plants. He was also tested on the identification of dangerous and weak magical creatures and asked questions about how to respond in certain dangerous situations to help him know what to do in emergencies or when he was at a disadvantage. He solved it easily because Roral had explained these topics very well. His elven teachers, being creatures who possessed knowledge of many things, also played a role. He then submitted his exam and passed with a good grade, as many of the questions were difficult. Many people wouldn't know about venomous and healing plants, but there are many of them. His level of strategy was also tested when answering questions about what he would do in difficult situations, since many would choose to retreat rather than fight. Natalie was surprised by the level of the chestnut. Natalie. Well, Issei, you've already passed the written exam. Your other exam will be given by the guild leader. Upon entering the office, Issei saw a 28-year-old man with honey brown hair, long white hair, and violet eyes. He wore a black suit with white, purple, and gold details, appearing to be someone of noble birth or high status. Natalie. Mr. Alen, this is new, it's here for you to take your practical test to join the guild. Issei. Hello sir, I'm Issei, nice to meet you. He bowed. Alen. It's a pleasure, young man. Before we do the practical test, I'll give you a routine test. This is something we new adventurers do. It's the Magna test to see if you have magic or spiritual arts. Many discover this late because they don't know about it or haven't trained these kinds of skills, or because many don't own a Magna sphere, since it's quite expensive for the general public. Issei. I understand, Mr. Alen, it's not necessary since I did this with my father, Roral, and if I possess magic, I don't think this is necessary. He said it trying to avoid the topic since he didn't want to touch on the Magna sphere, knowing what the outcome would be. And Natalie and Alen's reactions upon seeing the power of all the elements were something out of the ordinary and beyond the reach of any normal human. And he wasn't normal, knowing how his life had changed. Besides, no one else should know this secret because of the potential consequences and the problems it could cause him. But he could not escape this because Alen noticed his nervousness and they forced him to the point that he could not refuse. Issei. Okay, I'll do it, but promise that whatever happens, you won't tell anyone you saw it, because I don't want to get in trouble with anyone if this gets out. They nodded at the chestnut-haired man's words, not knowing why this was happening, but they didn't dwell on it and continued. The chestnut-haired man placed his hand on the Magna sphere. And just like what had happened 6 years ago with Roral, the same result was repeated, astonishing Alen and Natalie, who couldn't believe it. Issei understood why he told them to keep it a secret, since this was outside the normal parameters. They knew that Issei was Roral's adopted son since he had retired from the guild years ago. Being of advanced age, even though he knew, he wondered who Issei really was to possess such power, as this was only possible in a million chances. Seeing Alen and Natali's expressions, Issei coughed gently to snap them out of their trance. The two of them came to their senses, embarrassed by the situation a few moments ago. Natali. Sorry Issei-san, we were very surprised to see your magna level. Issei. I hope you'll keep this a secret. As you noticed, he possesses all the elements. Something no normal human should have. I ask you to keep this a secret. You know the consequences that could occur if this secret were to become known. Natali and Alen spoke with seriousness and they nodded in agreement to keep the secret. Issei explained how he became Roral's son and how he became immortal, explaining that this was the reason his magna surpassed that of a normal human and allowed him to reach that world. However, Alen and Natali shared Roral's opinion that it was possible Issei had lost his memory, which was why he didn't know how he ended up in one of the spirit realms, ate those strange apples, drank that sacred water, and was eventually found by Roral in the forest. Although Alen thought he must be some kind of demigod, since it wouldn't make sense for a god to allow a human child to be in such a sacred and important place. Unless the brown-haired boy was a demigod or a special follower of some god, but the fact that he didn't know about those apples and that sacred water meant that something must have happened to Issei for him to lose his memory and not know that knowledge that everyone else possessed. Although Issei thought he had more tricks up his sleeve. He looked into the brunette's eyes, seeing that he had no ill intentions, and even though he was an immortal, he had more human morals than other people who had achieved immortality for selfish purposes. Roral. I trust you, Issei. It's clear you're a good kid. Besides, if Roral raised you, you must be a good person. So I'll keep your secret too. Now, let's do the practical test. For that, we'll go to the special training ground under the guild where your test will take place. The chestnut-haired man nodded and he and Natali followed Alen down some dark stairs, arriving at a large giant hall that was a large training field. Issei. Will I have to fight you or someone else? I don't know what my practical test will be about. Alen. The test is about evaluating your endurance, strength, strategy, skills, and composure and seriousness under pressure on the battlefield. This is fundamental for any adventurer, whether alone or in a team, to know what to do when you or your companions are in a difficult situation. Issei. I understand, but fight against some adventurer or against you. Alen. It won't be against some land golems. Natali, the honors. Natali, of course Mr. Allen. The chestnut tree, using its earth element, created several earth golems, which had swords, axes, and spiked maces made of rocks. Natali. This list of Issei's opponents. Alen. Good job, Issei. Your test will be to destroy the golems, no matter how many Natali creates, until one of the two can no longer go on. Agreed. Issei. I'm ready to pass this test, Mr. Alen. Once on the battlefield, Alen began the fight. Natali sent her golems to attack the chestnut-haired man. The worst part was the battlefield itself. Natali's earth magic had turned it into a rocky terrain, making it difficult to move and dodge. Issei jumped and dodged the golems. The Duke was outnumbered and the terrain was difficult to move on and also very destructive due to the golems' attacks. The chestnut-haired boy dodged the attacks by propelling himself with his fire element in his hands and feet. To land on his feet on the head of one of the golems and be surrounded by fire, to see all the fire gathered change shape in his hand to see a spear of fire. And burn and destroy the golems by plunging fire spears into their chests to make them explode into pieces. Natali and Alen were surprised by his fire element potential. But they saw Issei being cornered by the golems, who were blocking his exit, thinking the brown-haired boy was going to lose. But Issei gave a small imperceptible smile, as if he had his enemies right where he wanted them. Issei. I've got them. It appeared the goblins were about to attack Issei, but with a single flick of his wrists, the fake brown-haired man summoned two tornadoes that engulfed the goblins. Inside the logs, the golems collided with each other and were simultaneously torn to pieces. At the same time, the two tornadoes merged, becoming a tornado twice as large, which swept away the remaining golems on the battlefield. Natali used all her power to shield herself from the tornado and avoid being sucked in, while the golems, upon falling outside the tornado, crashed heavily to the ground, shattering into pieces. After the tornado dissipated into thin air, leaving behind a trail of rocks and destruction on the battlefield, Natali used all her power to create a dome of rock. The dome collapsed as Natali, exhausted, expended a great deal of magna. The tornado was so powerful that she used all her magna to reinforce the dome, as Sully was absorbed by it. Natali. That was very close. She said it exhausted, sitting down on the floor. Issei. It was a very good fight, Natali. Giving her his hand, helping her to stop. Natali. Thank you, Issei-san. It was a great fight. I almost didn't make it. That attack almost sent me flying with that tornado. You're very strong. She accepted Issei's hand, trying to stand, but her legs gave way and she almost fell. However, Issei caught her, carrying her princess style to prevent her from falling and getting hurt. Len. Good job, Issei. You definitely passed the practical test. Here's your adventurer's badge. Keep it somewhere visible so you don't have any problems. When you go on your missions, your rank is obsidian. He gave her a necklace made of obsidian, which was proof of his rank as an adventurer. Issei put on the necklace, grateful that all his effort had paid off and that he was now a true adventurer. Issei. Thank you very much, Mr. Alen, I appreciate it very much. Alen, you're welcome Issei. Just call me Alen, I'm not that old. Issei. Okay Alen. Natali was already feeling better and Issei had healed her with healing magic, still surprised by Issei's power, since many cannot use such advanced healing to heal so quickly. Natali. Come on, Issei, we need to go to the guild reception to finish the paperwork for your guild membership. Issei. Está bien Natali. Alen. I'm going to my office to do my work, see you later and Issei, welcome to the guild. Issei, thank you Alen. I'm very grateful to be here and to be part of the guild. Afterwards, the three of them left the place and back at the guild reception, Natali finished the paperwork for Issei's guild registration. Chapter 3. Previously. Issei put on the necklace, grateful that all his effort had paid off and that he was now a true adventurer. Issei. Thank you very much, Mr. Alen, I appreciate it very much. Alen, you're welcome Issei. Just call me Alen, I'm not that old. Issei. Okay Alen. Natali was already feeling better and Issei had healed her with healing magic, still surprised by Issei's power, since many cannot use such advanced healing to heal so quickly. Natali. Come on, Issei, we need to go to the guild reception to finish the paperwork for your guild membership. Issei. Okay, Natali. Alen. I'm going to my office to do my work, see you later and Issei, welcome to the guild. Issei, thank you Alen. I'm very grateful to be here and to be part of the guild. Afterwards, the three of them left the place and back at the guild reception, Natali finished the paperwork for Issei's guild registration. Natali. Okay, Issei-san, you're now registered as an adventurer. Welcome. As you know, on the mission board you can choose any mission you want or one according to your rank. Issei, thank you Natali. I'm excited. I'll do it tomorrow since it's late and I have to go home. Natali. Okay, Issei-san. Then I'll see you tomorrow. The chestnut tree nodded, leaving the guild and running through the forest, happy to have achieved its goal of becoming an adventurer, quickly arriving home. Upon arriving, Roral greeted him. Roral. Hi son, how did it go at the guild? Issei. I did well, Dad. I passed all the tests they gave me to register as an adventurer. Issei displayed his necklace, revealing his rank and surprising Roral, although he had expected it, knowing Issei's power. However, he was proud of his son for coming so far, especially at that age, since it would take many others years of effort to achieve something like that. Roral. I'm proud of you, son. Congratulations on fulfilling your dream of being an adventurer. I know you'll go far. Issei, thank you Dad. Thank you for always believing in me and saying I would succeed. Roral. You're welcome, son, we have to celebrate. So father and son made a delicious dinner, eating until they couldn't eat anymore. The next morning, Issei went to the guild to see what mission he could do. Issei. Let's see, look for someone's lost dog. I'm not keen on cleaning the plaza, nor am I interested in rats. Try finding 10 medicinal plants near the forest in the meadow. Not there either. He kept looking at the board for a mission until he saw one to go to a nearby village where they had a goblin problem. It was a goblin hunting and extermination mission, since there were too many for the village to handle on its own, and besides, they couldn't find the location of the goblin cave. Issei. Goblins are weak, but in groups they're a bit tough. It'll be an interesting field mission. I'll take it. The pay is good and it'll give me a chance to test my skills. He took the mission slip and brought it to Natali so she could assign him the mission and give him more information about it. The brunette did, telling him he had a week to complete the mission if he had any problems, as well as how much he would be paid. The chestnut-haired boy seemed fine with it and said he would sit down to eat for a while before leaving on his mission. Meanwhile, Natali prepared the things Issei would need for his mission. The items the guild provided before a mission were mostly empty. The rest he had to buy himself. Issei did some of this since he needed to be prepared for his mission. He was sitting eating when some adventurers saw his rank necklace around his neck, something that many didn't like, that a kid second to them had such a high rank. Adventurer 1. Hey kid, why do you have an obsidian necklace? Who did you steal it from? Adventurer 2. Stealing isn't right, kid. Adventurer 5. You'd better return that to its rightful owner. Issei. What are you talking about? I'm of this rank, and if I have this necklace, it's because, just like my rank, I earned it through my own effort. Adventurer 3. Come on kid, stop lying. It's impossible for someone as young as you to be that rank. Just take a mission of your true rank and leave. Stop lying and pretending to be something you're not. The chestnut-haired man simply used his magic power to rise with an icy gaze, silencing everyone. Issei. You're seriously underestimating me. Just because I'm young doesn't mean my skills are worthless. I earned my rank through my own hard work and I have no right to take something that isn't mine. I shouldn't risk my life and do things I couldn't do without this rank. So take your unsolicited opinions and keep them to yourselves and leave me alone once and for all. I don't interfere in your business, so why do you have to interfere in mine? If you don't want me to put you in your place, you'd better keep quiet. All the adventurers fell silent in fear. No one said a word because of the overwhelming energy. This caught the attention of Natalie and Alan, who wondered what all the commotion was about. Alan. What's going on here? Adventurer. Mr. Alan, this kid took someone else's rank collar and is saying that's his rank. Alan looked at the person the adventurer pointed to and saw that it was Issei. Alan. Are you seriously making such a fuss about that? Leave the kid alone, that's his collar, and that's his rank. How could he not do it when Natalie and I were the ones who gave him his tests? This left everyone surprised by what the white-haired boy said, knowing how serious he was and that he wouldn't break something like that. Their doubts were more than dispelled when they saw Issei's information on the adventurer's board, showing his scores in the theoretical and practical tests. This left many speechless and others wide-eyed, unable to believe what they were seeing. Issei just took his things for his mission. He no longer wanted to talk to ignorant people. Issei. Goodbye Mr. Alan and Natalie. Natalie. Goodbye Issei-san, have a good mission. Alan. Goodbye Issei, take care. I'm sorry for the misunderstanding you went through. I don't think anyone will have any more doubts about your rank. I'm sure this won't happen again. He said at last, looking at the other adventurers who only swallowed the future because of the heavy atmosphere. Issei. Don't worry, Mr. Alan, I'd better go. I don't want to keep arguing with ignorant people who underestimate others. He said it seriously, looking at the others who were sweating nervously. Then he left the place, while the others sighed with relief that the awkward moment was over. Adventurer 6. That boy is really scary. He said it sweating profusely. Adventurer 4. Yes, but that doesn't change the fact that she's very cute for her age. Adventurer 5. It's true he is very attractive for his age. Issei said goodbye to his father and left for his mission. He took a cart to the village he was to visit. This would be his first time traveling far from the city. After a few hours, he arrived at the village in the morning. Upon reaching the entrance, he had to pay a toll, or taxes, to be there, or if he was an adventurer, show a permit to stay without being charged. When he showed his adventurer's badge and his necklace, he had trouble with the guards, since they didn't believe that someone so young could be an adventurer, especially someone of such high rank. Villager 1. Hey kid, who did you steal those things from? Villager 2. That's wrong, you must return it to its owner. Woman. You shouldn't be here, go home, boy. Woman 3. This is not the place for you. Stop playing the adventurer and go home. Villager 4. As a child, you could die. You are very far from home. Some tried to take Issei to the village leader, who also said the same thing, underestimating the brown-haired boy for being so young to be an adventurer and for having such a high rank, since it would take a normal person more than 20 years to reach that level, something impossible for many, especially at that age. Issei. That's enough. Just tell me where the goblins have been seen lately so I can find their nest and wipe them out. And complete my mission. Leader. Why are you making so much noise? Villager 8. Sir, it's because of this kid who was sent by the guild to supposedly help us with our goblin problem. Leader. Seriously? I thought the guild would send us a real adventurer, not a kid. Kid, don't be so arrogant, that's very dangerous for you. Villager 7. Let him die if he wants to, it's his decision. Issei set off on his mission, following the trail of the goblins, who had last been seen attacking the village. He searched for a while until he found the cave. Issei. The goblin nest must be here. When I entered the cave, between the cave corridors. But then he heard footsteps and saw a goblin running towards him. A short, wild being with worn clothes and daggers in his hands. Issei. Finally something interesting to warm up with and use my skills. The goblin lunged at him with great force, but the chestnut-haired man only moved a little. A tentacle of darkness pierced the goblin's neck, killing it. The chestnut-haired man began to move about the area, killing goblins left and right. With a bow imbued with magic, he killed them with fire and lightning arrows. And as proof of his mission, he cut off the goblin's right ears. Issei. I've already killed almost 100 goblins, or more judging by the number of ears I've cut off. but I haven't encountered the goblin leader. It's strange. There are so many goblins, and I can't find the leader unless he's deep inside the cave. But then an earthquake shook the cave, revealing not the leader of the goblins, but the Goblin King. He was larger than the other goblins, standing 5 meters tall. He wore heavy armor with spikes and chains on his armor and body. Issei. I was expecting the goblin leader, but not the Goblin King. It will be interesting to see how I fare against the Goblin King. He said it slightly animatedly. Goblin King. You are very arrogant, human. We'll see how arrogant you are when your corpse is at my feet. Issei. We'll see who dies first. But that angered the Goblin King, causing him to advance towards the chestnut tree and cut off its head. The Goblin King, sober, arrogantly and with satisfaction saw the chestnut tree dead. Goblin King. Ha 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 ha, you stupid human, you chewed more than you could chew, and that led to your death. A simple snot, you couldn't defeat me in 1,000 years. But as he turned to leave, he sheathed his sword again. And he began to take a few steps away. He heard the chestnut tree's dead body rise as if nothing had happened, and the recently severed head crumbled to dust without leaving ashes. Then he watched as the chestnut tree's body regenerated its head as if nothing had occurred. The great murderous aura emanated from the place where the Goblin King had been. He remained frozen, feeling a terrible premonition. Then, the chestnut-haired man raised his head, his eyes glowing red with a cold, piercing gaze amidst the darkness. Issei. Goblin King, so you said you killed me? It's quite amusing to see how naive you are. I let you behead me. It was to see how strong you are, but you can't even excite me. You're a weakling, or worse, an insignificant ant in my eyes. This is your last day in this world. The Goblin King turned around in surprise. He was sweating slightly at the sight of the chestnut-haired man still alive, wondering how it was possible that he was still alive, since he had killed him just moments before. Goblin King. How is it possible that you're still alive? No matter, I'll kill you. The Goblin King lunged at the chestnut tree in a fierce sword fight, sparks flying. The chestnut tree barely moved, managing to parry the Goblin King and push him away, causing him to crash into the cave wall, shaking the place and the mountain itself. This angered the Goblin King, who grew serious and raised her sword. She attacked with a powerful burst of black flames, unleashing a devastating battle that shook the ground and caused the cave to crumble. This drove the Goblin King to despair, as no matter how many wounds he inflicted on Issei, he did not retreat and seemed to feel no pain, much less defend himself. He seemed not to be human. Goblin King. How is it possible that you haven't died with so many wounds, are you not human? Issei. You could say I have more humanity than any human, but at the same time, I possess a power that makes me immortal and prevents me from dying. He said this as his wounds healed, leaving no mark on his skin. This frightened the Goblin King even more, who couldn't believe what he was seeing. Issei. I'm tired of this battle, it's time to end this once and for all. He used his power of darkness to envelop the Goblin King in a dense darkness. He was transformed into a small, round, black creature with purple markings on its mouth, being lifted up like a ball. He raised his right hand and unleashed a massive amount of hellfire over 10 meters high, causing the creature to shudder at the sight of such a supernatural, demonic blaze. The creature felt the entire cave heat up as if it were hotter than 1,000 ovens. Together, they felt themselves sweating profusely from the unbearable heat. They wondered how this brat possessed such supernatural power, something no human could possibly have, especially not a kid his age. Issei. Now you will die like the useless cockroach you are, you will be burned in the flames of hell. He said it with such a cold and serious, emotionless look that it made the creature that was the Goblin King nervous and scared. Goblin King. You damned brat, I hope I meet you in hell. Issei. For your information, I've been there before, but from another location, and it's not very nice. Now it's your turn to see the one here. To lure the creature into the shadows, its cries of pain and agony echoed through the air as it was engulfed in flames, its skin scorched and charred. The place reeked of decomposing, burnt flesh, until after a few minutes the screams ceased, revealing nothing left of the creature that had been the former Goblin King. Only a crystal of the creature's energy remained. The chestnut-haired man touched it, and being a high-level monster crystal, it possessed a great power. When it was in his hands, the crystal changed shape. It also fused with his energy. 2 golden daggers with blades of a high-grade material appeared, each blade displaying different colored energies. One dagger was red with yellow sections, like volcanic fire. The other dagger had dark blue energy with white and shimmering sections, like the blue ice of a glacier. Issei. Well, I came looking for goblins for my mission, and I earned 2 powerful daggers with high-level magic. Being made from a high-level monster crystal, they're quite rare and interesting since they're constantly changing. It's unknown what form they can take depending on who possesses the crystal. The chestnut tree took the daggers and left the cave. Upon returning to the village, it was astonished to see him back alive. It couldn't believe he was truly alive and had completed his mission. The chestnut-haired man entered the inn to rest and eat something after the villagers celebrated no longer having to deal with the goblins. They were having a great time and thanking the chestnut-haired man for what he had done for them, and many apologized for having underestimated him and judged him and his abilities. Back at the inn, in Issei's room, he was asleep and as darkness fell, a mysterious woman appeared, the same one who had brought the brunette to that world years ago. Unknown. It's interesting to see myself again, little one. I see you're growing. Being almost a man, it's not yet time for us to see each other worse. When that time comes, you'll have to pass the last test I have for you. We'll see if you'll be my follower. When that day comes, I'll take better care of you than those filthy creatures did. I've already set my sights on you, and I won't let anyone else have you. I've made up my mind. Those people haven't seen your potential yet. You haven't fully realized it. But when the time comes that you're by my side as my subordinate, everyone will see how special you've always been. She stroked the chestnut-haired boy's head, kissing his forehead before leaving. She touched his cheek, then disappeared into the shadows. Chapter 4. Previously. Issei. Well, I came looking for goblins for my mission, and I earned 2 powerful daggers with high-level magic. Being made from a high-level monster crystal, they're quite rare and interesting since they're constantly changing. It's unknown what form they can take depending on who possesses the crystal. The chestnut tree took the daggers and left the cave. Upon returning to the village, it was astonished to see him back alive. It couldn't believe he was truly alive and had completed his mission. The chestnut-haired man entered the inn to rest and eat something after the villagers celebrated no longer having to deal with the goblins. They were having a great time and thanking the chestnut-haired man for what he had done for them, and many apologized for having underestimated him and judged him and his abilities. Back at the inn, in Issei's room, he was asleep and as darkness fell, a mysterious woman appeared, the same one who had brought the brunette to that world years ago. Unknown. It's interesting to see myself again, little one. I see you're growing. Being almost a man, it's not yet time for us to see each other worse. When that time comes, you'll have to pass the last test I have for you. We'll see if you'll be my follower. When that day comes, I'll take better care of you than those filthy creatures did. I've already set my sights on you, and I won't let anyone else have you. I've made up my mind. Those people haven't seen your potential yet. You haven't fully realized it. But when the time comes that you're by my side as my subordinate, everyone will see how special you've always been. She stroked the chestnut-haired boy's head, kissing his forehead before leaving. She touched his cheek, then disappeared into the shadows. The next morning, our protagonist, already awake, went to have breakfast at the inn before returning to the city to collect his reward for the completed mission. Since yesterday, people treated him better than before when he first arrived in the village. It was understandable that they judged him that way. What kind of normal child could possess such power to defeat so many goblins single-handedly, especially one who was a high-ranking adventurer? After breakfast and packing his things before leaving, he went to say goodbye to the village leader. The leader thanked the brown-haired boy one last time for helping them with their goblin problem, something Issei said he didn't need to thank. He had only done his job as an adventurer. Seeing his modesty, the leader wanted to give him something as an apology for the rude way he had treated him the day before they first met. The chestnut tree saw the leader give him a small copper that was a kind of stone egg, with slight reddish touches. Issei. Excuse me, sir, is this some kind of creature egg? Leader. That's right, lad, this is a phoenix egg, something unique. This egg was found years ago by the former leader of this village. No one ever managed to hatch it because they didn't have enough power, or the egg didn't choose them as its tamer. Very few are capable of taming creatures as powerful as a phoenix. And raising one from an egg, the bond between a tamer and their creatures is special. And I feel you have what it takes to make the phoenix rise from within the egg, choosing you as its tamer, since I saw you are stronger and more capable than I thought. You taught me a great lesson about not judging a book by its cover, and I wanted to give something back to you. Issei. Thank you very much, sir, but I have a question. Phoenixes are supposed to be strong and protective of their young. Why wouldn't one return for its offspring? Leader. Without the warmth and energy of its parents, the egg cannot hatch on its own, remaining in a state of perpetual incubation until its parents return or it is tamed by a beast tamer. Since centuries ago the other races were engaged in endless wars, it is possible that the parents of this phoenix hatchling perished in those conflicts. The egg had been forgotten, its presence unnoticed, until the previous leader of Nai stumbled upon it in a part of the forest and identified it as one from a phoenix hatchling. Having been cared for until this day, he wished it luck in hatching. Issei, thank you sir. I appreciate the gesture. The chestnut-haired boy took the egg and carried it away, bidding farewell to the village leader. Later that night, Issei was camping in the forest as it was quite late and he was only a short distance from the city. So he stopped to rest for a while, made a fire to cook and warm himself, and the egg was wrapped in a special blanket to help it hatch and keep it warm in the night air. Issei. I wonder how long it will take to hatch the phoenix egg. It must be quite complicated since I've never tamed a magical creature before. And even less so something like a phoenix, which are said to be immortal and rare creatures of great power and knowledge. The chestnut-haired man took the egg in his hands, cradling it and warming it in his arms. Then he did as the village leader had instructed. He cut himself slightly, infusing his blood with fire magic and placing it upon the phoenix egg. The egg glowed briefly, a fire symbol appearing on it, and then the glow faded as if nothing had happened. The chestnut-haired man was surprised by what his father had done, but his composure softened slightly when he saw that nothing else happened, except the egg glowed for a moment. He thought that perhaps he hadn't used more power than necessary for it to work, but he saw that it was already late and he was tired, thinking that he would do it again tomorrow. He went into his tent and fell asleep with the phoenix egg, which was wrapped in blankets and placed on a pillow about 3 meters away. Unbeknownst to him, the egg glowed faintly, like small flames that flickered and faded. An hour later, the egg hatched, releasing a small orange bird with white markings and faint phlegm-like streaks in its plumage. Its beak was red, and its feathers had reddish details. Its face, wings, and chest were marked with white, and the eggshell glowed a bright red from its warmth. The little bird, seeing its surroundings, didn't understand where it was, but being so small, it slithered across the blankets and pillows until it reached Issei. The little bird recognized him as its tamer and master, the one who had brought it into being. Issei's energy was so strong, pure and warm that it nourished the little phoenix's body, allowing it to hatch from the egg. The little phoenix lay down near Issei to sleep beside its new master. The next morning, Issei woke up and, seeing the broken phoenix egg, worried about the hatchling, searching everywhere for it. He wondered if what he had done the night before had worked to make it hatch so quickly. Then he saw some blankets move, and as he caught them, the blanket burst into flames. Like a baby phoenix, it had finished developing, now a little bigger than last night, looking like a fiery bird in flames in Issei's hands. He wore special gloves that could withstand the heat as the blankets burned to ash. In his hands, he wrapped a firebird, which chirped happily at seeing its master awake. Issei. Well, honestly, I didn't expect you to hatch so soon, little phoenix, but what's done is done. No need to worry about spilled milk. I would have loved to see you hatch, but there's nothing I can do now. As I will be your master and tamer, I should give you a name. The chestnut-haired man began to think of a good name for his phoenix, remembering how last night the egg shone like a bright and radiant flame. He already had a name that he thought was perfect for his phoenix, but he wouldn't be sure until his phoenix decided whether or not it liked the name. Issei. Well, little one, your name will be Daha, which means a bright and radiant flame. Because before you hatched, your egg shone like a radiant flame in the darkness. The little phoenix was happy and liked the name his teacher had given him. Issei. Then Daha will be fine, partner. It's time to return to the city, and you can meet father. It will be interesting to see what father says when he sees that I am your tamer. The little phoenix flew onto Issei's shoulder, and he smiled, packing his things to get into his cart and head to the city. He decided to go home first, as he would go to the guild tomorrow to collect his reward for his mission to identify the goblins. As soon as he arrived home, Roral, who was about to start making dinner, greeted him and was surprised to see Issei with a baby phoenix on his shoulder. Chapter 5. The little phoenix was happy and liked the name his teacher had given him. Issei. Then Daha will be fine, partner. It's time to return to the city, and you can meet father. It will be interesting to see what father says when he sees that I am your tamer. The little phoenix flew onto Issei's shoulder, and he smiled, packing his things to get into his cart and head to the city. He arrived home first, having decided to go to the guild tomorrow to collect his reward for his mission to identify the goblins. As soon as he got home, Roral was preparing dinner and was surprised to see Issei with a baby phoenix on his shoulder. The next morning, Issei was seen waking up, along with his phoenix. Preparing to go downstairs for breakfast, he noticed the entrance to the cabin, adorned with many flowers and a bear rug, the one belonging to the bear that attacked Roral and Issei when they first met. The chestnut-haired boy greeted his father with a small phoenix perched on his shoulder. The three of them ate breakfast. The little phoenix ate with Issei's help, as his energy nourished it. But it was still a baby, and the chestnut-haired boy gave it some milk and meat, since it was a phoenix after all. The chestnut-haired boy got up, said goodbye to his father, and went to the guild to receive his reward for the mission. Although everyone in the guild was surprised to see the chestnut-haired boy possess a phoenix, a creature so rare to obtain, and no one could tame a phoenix so easily without first fighting the one they were trying to tame, Natalia and Alan were also surprised. But coming from someone as special as Issei, it shouldn't be too surprising. The chestnut-haired man gave his mission report, showing the goblin ears as well as the daggers that had once been a weapon of the Goblin King. He received 50 gold coins for the mission, plus a bonus of 20 more. But some of the villagers apologized for the trouble they caused him when he arrived in the village. The chestnut-haired boy accepted the bonus and stored his money in his magic pouch, a type of bag mages use to store items almost infinitely. Time passed, and Issei became well known throughout the city as the Obsidian ranked adventurer, a rank equivalent to an SSS, and the only one in town who could tame a phoenix. The chestnut-haired man improved his skills and techniques as well. He had more abilities than before, having traveled to many places throughout the kingdom, gathering information, skills, and knowledge of all kinds, and meeting many people who helped him improve his abilities. 5 years had passed, and the chestnut-haired man was enjoying his new life with people who truly valued him, though he sometimes had faint memories of his past before arriving in this world. He didn't understand why he remembered horrible things, why the beings had cast him into the void. But that no longer mattered to him now, even though those images occasionally surfaced in his mind. He thinks they must be repressed memories, but he refuses to remember those things now. He has a peaceful life and doesn't want to recall a painful past that would make him feel bad. In this peaceful life, his little phoenix grew. Now Issei was in the guild eating with Daha. Issei. This will be a quiet day, Daha. The phoenix happily grinned at the words of his master, then Natalie appeared. Natalie. Hi Issei-san. Issei. Hello Natalie, what's up? Is there a new mission for me? Natalie. There isn't an offer for you this time. Issei. What kind of offer? Natalie. Well, Alan and the others in the guild want to give you a special job. They want you to be a teacher for the various jobs that adventurers do, since everyone knows you're good at every job and surpass many in knowledge. You'll help train novice adventurers, as the guild came up with this idea, so that some 14 or 15-year-olds can train with you to strengthen their skills before becoming adventurers themselves. This way they'll learn what the life of an adventurer is like, and they'll be able to become better adventurers when they undertake missions. Many novices already struggle in the field in facing monsters, and by following this educational plan, they'll become stronger and more capable adventurers. Besides, the guild will pay you very well for the classes you teach, since there are many talented young people who can use more than one habit. Issei. I don't see it as a bad idea. I think it would be good to take a break from missions, although I'll do missions from time to time, so as not to overuse my skills, so I accept. Natalie. Great, I'll do the necessary paperwork and inform Mr. Allen. She said goodbye to the chestnut-haired man, and he continued on his way, thinking it wasn't a bad idea, since his adventurer's knowledge was good, and it would be selfish not to help talented young people who couldn't see their hidden talents. It would be good to give them a mentor, since he too had been helped in his early days as an adventurer. 5 years later, the chestnut-haired man was in his living room practicing with a wooden sword. He had enlarged his cabin to create a training hall, as during this time he trained great adventurers, knights, mages, and high-level swordsmen, becoming known throughout the royal capital as the Master of Legends. Although the chestnut-haired man didn't like being recognized, for him, being a triple S rank adventurer was already a great achievement. His father, Roral, told him he should take a break from adventurer and teacher and try to meet a girl and start a family. The chestnut-haired man just sighed at his father's suggestion, knowing the idea of having grandchildren to take care of appealed to him. The chestnut-haired man said that everything would happen in its own time and that, being immortal, he had plenty of time. Besides, he didn't want to involve anyone with him. It was possible that if a girl were to fall in love with him, he'd be crazy since he was twice her age. Even if he were to reach 40, he'd look 25 someday. Furthermore, his name is already well known throughout the kingdoms as the only immortal and for his feats 3 years ago when he defeated the monstrous emperor. In a war where the other races united, setting aside their differences to save them all. Because it was a difficult war to manage, everyone saw Issei's immortal abilities. After the war, he could no longer be considered human. At least his actions and personality were, but in terms of power and abilities, he was now someone of another race, one of immortals. The only ones with great vitality were elves or martial warriors who cultivated energy. It was strange to many that Issei, without being an elf or a cultivator, was immortal. He was known by many as almost a god, so much so that people had created a religion around him. The brown-haired boy was so overwhelmed by so many past events that he had to wear a mask to go out in public so no one would recognize him, as he was a celebrity among many people. So much so that even the leaders of each race praised him, so much so that he brought peace among the races. Many of these leaders wanted to marry him to their daughters or nieces, inundating the poor man with marriage proposals. Note. Later chapters will follow this one, explaining in more detail how these events occurred. End of note. The chestnut-haired man sighed as he recalled all those events, for all he wanted was a peaceful life. And now he was very well known throughout the world. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door, and when he opened it, he saw 2 girls who rushed to hug him. Girls. Teacher. Chapter 6. The chestnut cabin was visible, surrounded by flowers and flowering ferns, while the fire in the fireplace warmed the air. There was also a rug made from the skin of the bear that Roral had killed years before when he first met Issei. The chestnut-haired man sat sipping a cup of tea, one eyebrow twitching, as he watched two strikingly beautiful young women in gentleman's attire attend to him. These were his former students from his time as a guild master, training novice adventurers. He was nervous because the two girls were sticking to him like glue, trying to shove cookies into his mouth. Issei. Ahem. What brings you here, Princess Clarissa Sorio and the commander of the Knights Miss Alice Alcala? He said it, raising an eyebrow, looking at the girl with porcelain white skin, light blue eyes, and silver hair. She wore a white dress with light blue and dark blue and gold accents, with sections of a cape at her waist, carrying a white sword with blue details. The dress clung to her body, further enhancing her beauty and elegant calm demeanor. She wore light armor on her arms, legs, and feet. The other was a girl with pink hair and ruby red eyes. She wore white and gold knight's armor adorned with pink gems. She also wore a white and pink skirt that clung to her body, enhancing her beauty and knightly bearing, along with a white cape draped over her shoulders with pink trim and white rose patterns that contrasted with her attire. In her right hand, she carried a large sword with a pink and white hilt and a gold blade, each hilt adorned with a heart-shaped gem. The two girls blushed at what their teacher said, realizing that he only called them by their full names when he was annoyed or uncomfortable. They also noticed their teacher's discomfort at the inappropriate way they were addressing him. Clarice and Alice. Sorry, teacher. Issei. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. What am I going to do with you two? But, changing the subject, what brings you here? Feeling even more embarrassed by the situation, they moved away, sitting with their heads down and apologizing for their behavior. Just then, Roral arrived and, upon seeing the girls, recognized them as her son's former students. Roral. Well, ladies, it's a pleasure to see you. You've grown so much since the last time I saw you. You've become very beautiful young women. What man would fall in love with you? What do you think, son? Giving a light nudge to the chestnut tree, which almost choked on its tea because of his father's insinuations. Issei. They've grown into beautiful and strong young ladies, so I can see they're part of the elite knight squad. Any man would be honored to stand beside them. The girls blushed at their teacher's words. Roral. They must have many suitors. Meanwhile, you, son, haven't found a partner in all these years. You'll grow old if you keep this up, even if you're immortal. I wouldn't mind if you spent time with one of them. They're very pretty, and you know them very well. Is it too much to ask for a grandson or granddaughter who calls me grandpa? The chestnut-haired boy, who was already on the verge of choking on his tea, was now even worse, spitting it out and coughing a little. It was the low blow his father had dealt him with those words, which had struck at his pride. Issei. Father, I'm 6 or 8 years older than them. It wouldn't be appropriate. I doubt they'd even notice me, don't talk nonsense. With the lifestyle I lead, I'm fine. I'm too busy to be thinking about having a partner right now. The girls blushed at what Roral said and whispered quietly that they wouldn't mind marrying their teacher, a blush rising on their cheeks. The chestnut-haired man looked at them and asked if they had said anything. They shook their heads, blushing. Issei. Alright, girls, what brings you here? Clarice. Well, Issei-sensei. The reason we're here is by royal decree from my father, who greatly appreciates your teachings to great adventurers and knights. For that reason, my father wants you to be the master of the knights and assist in their training. Besides, they want to bestow upon you a title for your past achievements. Alice. They would have given it to you sooner, but you're not someone who's easy to find. This greatly surprised Issei and Roral, as they hadn't expected it, even though Issei wanted nothing to do with an ability. That word brought back bad memories, the reason for which he didn't even know. He only heard strange voices sometimes. Memories that told him things like, voice. You're a useless lowlife. Voice. You're not on our level. Voice. You're just a worthless piece of trash. Voice. You're a waste of life in this world. Voice. Someone like you should never even dream of being near us. Voice. People like you should never exist. Voice. You're a disgrace to us. Voice. Trash will always be trash. Voice. Look, there goes the nobody. Voice. How can he even think he can be in the same place as us? Voice. He's just a disposable pawn. Voice. People like him will never achieve anything in their lives. Voice. I would never be with someone worthless like you. Voice. I should have let you die when I had the chance. Voice. You're not even good enough to be a servant. Voice. You're only good for crying. You're not even good enough to be a man. Your brother knows how to please a woman better than you. Voice. What a weak brother I have. You're not even good as a brother. Voice. Not even as a companion. You're the weakest carrier I've ever known. He simply shook his head to dispel those memories, though an image of himself as a child flashed through his mind for a moment. He was in a dark place, covered in wounds and bandages, lying on the ground in chains, his gaze fixed on emptiness like a broken, empty shell. The little boy asked these questions to the void. Why am I here? Why are they doing this to me? What did I do wrong to deserve this? Truly, my life has no value to anyone. Why did I come into this world if all I came to do was suffer? I'm hungry and cold and so tired. I should die and leave this world full of suffering and pain. Perhaps then I would be happy. No one would miss me anyway. If I'm reborn, I could eat until my stomach is full and no longer feel cold and sleep peacefully in the arms of someone who truly loves me. The chestnut-haired man simply lowered his gaze, his hair covering his eyes, as he had a flashback of what his life in this world had been like. Flashback. The chestnut-haired man arrived at the guild to receive his first students, whom he would train as new novice adventurers. Natalie and Alan had already completed the necessary paperwork, making him the new mentor for the guild's new recruits. His first students were Clarice and Alice. He was initially surprised to learn they were from noble and royal families, but they had the right to be adventurers, so he couldn't deny them their dreams. At first, Alice and Clarice didn't trust him because he was too young to be their instructor, given his royal and noble lineage. They were quite skilled with swords. They thought that Issei would be like any other instructor, easy to defeat because of their talent. But they were very wrong to underestimate the brown-haired boy, since in just a few moves he disarmed them and left them cornered, surprising each of them, since they never saw him move. Issei. Regardless of your opponent's age or appearance, never underestimate them, because that mistake could cost you dearly someday. It could cost you your life or the life of one of your comrades. Even if you consider yourselves good and strong, there's always something new to learn in this vast and infinite world. Decide if you want to fall behind and believe you're strong, knowing there will always be someone stronger than you. It's fine to consider yourself strong, but you shouldn't consider yourself invincible when you haven't reached your own limits, much less surpassed them. Decide to be better and strive every day to become more. They can either become strong or stagnate in their old ways, believing themselves invincible and being defeated by any enemy without giving their all, leaving their loved ones to die because of their arrogance and pay for their mistakes. Or they can become stronger to protect themselves and those they love and to protect those who cannot defend themselves. From that day on, Alice and Clarice recognized the chestnut-haired man as their teacher. They set aside their pride and appreciated Issei's teachings, recognizing that for someone so young, he possessed a wealth of wisdom and experience, which would be invaluable to them in achieving their goals. If they learned everything they could from him, more and more young people would join his tutelage. When he deemed them ready and had nothing more to teach them, he performed a special ritual, offering each student heartfelt farewells and bestowing upon them a weapon. He personally tailored the training to each of his students' abilities, making it a graduation and farewell gift. Initially, many doubted Issei's training methods, as he had them jump across platforms made of logs while wielding wooden swords. Then, he set up various obstacles they had to dodge, jump over, or run through, throwing small rocks at them, even in water, and climbing a mountain while running with a bar carrying large, heavy buckets of water. But they eventually understood that this was to improve their strength, speed, and endurance. The brown-haired man explained that for a swordsman or knight, their sword or weapon was essential. They should see it as an extension of their body or soul. And that, no matter what, they should never lose or break it. He emphasized the importance of dropping their weapon on the field. In battle, losing their weapon would be a death sentence for them and their comrades, or for those they wish to defend. If they lose their weapon, they must push their bodies to their limits and break them, using that broken body as a weapon. Never say you are defeated without having fallen and possessing the strength and their will to keep going and fighting until their last breath. The environment catered to all kinds of students in different professions, including magic, alchemy, martial arts, hand-to-hand combat techniques, and the use of bladed weapons. He also taught them how to identify plants for use in healing potions and first aid skills, since they couldn't always rely on magic or potions to heal themselves or others. That's why it's best to know what to do in circumstances where magic and potions aren't available. Many of his students initially thought it unnecessary to have more than one profession as an adventurer. But then they saw the advantage. They realized that if mages ran out of mana, they wouldn't be able to defend themselves without having improved their physical strength and without knowing how to fight and defend themselves against an enemy. That's why it was good to know hand-to-hand combat and how to use weapons. It was good for swordsmen and knights, who were skilled with swords and bladed weapons, to learn magic and martial arts, since even their own fists could be lethal weapons against an enemy, and magic could enhance their magical attacks. For alchemists, every skill physical, combat, and magical had to be honed, as their magical artifacts weren't always reliable, and they couldn't rely on them entirely. If a magical artifact failed, they or their companions could be in grave danger. Like their students, they grew up to be great adventurers, swordsmen, or warriors, holding a title among all people. The Master of Legends. Since no one could defeat their students, they were the ones who could barely put up a fight against their master, but in a real battle, it was a very different story. Similarly, the chestnut tree was summoned by the king, Claris's father, because he wanted to meet him in person. The chestnut tree wanted to refuse to attend because he didn't see it as necessary, but his father told him that refusing a royal order would be punishable by death. Although, in terms of death, the chestnut tree had lost count of the times he'd lost limbs and regenerated, returning from the dead as if it were nothing. He merely sighed and went, for Claris's puppy dog eyes were so annoying to her master that he finally agreed to go. And upon arriving, he presented himself to the king. If he continued like this, he would end up broken, without skill or energy, and would be crushed by his imminent defeat. While resting, the king suggested to Issei that he would be suitable to marry his daughter, but Issei declined, saying that she was his student and he didn't consider it appropriate. He also told the king that Clarice deserved someone better than him, a mere adventurer. Both the king and Clarice agreed that the chestnut-haired boy was too humble, unable to see his own greatness and worth. The king sighed, but thought it was only a matter of time before the chestnut-haired boy became his son-in-law, given how special Issei had proven to be. A worthy and skilled master, with great talents and abilities. He wasn't arrogant about his victory, but rather helped the king appear more dignified, explaining that he had given his all in the fight, and regardless of his loss, he hadn't lost, and that it wasn't for his own sake. Why be discouraged? The king told Issei he would compensate him with a noble title, land, and riches. The chestnut-haired boy refused, saying he wasn't interested in a noble title or wealth, and that he didn't want to be in the world of royalty or nobility for personal reasons. Therefore, the king wouldn't go into details, as he knew it was a delicate matter if Issei wasn't able to discuss it openly. The king decided that he would at least grant him complete freedom and permission to ask him for any favor he desired, no matter what it was, whenever the chestnut-haired man needed it. He also gave him the key to the royal library, filled with books on advanced magic of all kinds, and to the ancient workshop of the old alchemist who had once owned the castle centuries before. But it wasn't used by anyone of the same caliber as the old alchemist. The chestnut-haired man accepted. Openly. The chestnut tree accepted that gift from the king, since it was less ostentatious than the other things he wanted to give him. It was also interesting to be able to read any magic books I wanted and to practice alchemy in the workshop of the castle's former alchemist. For, as an old saying goes, knowledge is power if you know how to use it to your advantage. Chapter 7. Previously. The king sighed, but thought it was only a matter of time before the chestnut-haired boy became his son-in-law, given how special Issei had proven to be. A worthy and skilled master, with great talents and abilities. He wasn't arrogant about his victory, but rather helped the king appear more dignified, explaining that he had given his all in the fight, and regardless of his loss, he hadn't lost, and that it wasn't for his own sake. Why be discouraged? The king told Issei he would compensate him with a noble title, land, and riches. The chestnut-haired boy refused, saying he wasn't interested in a noble title or wealth, and that he didn't want to be in the world of royalty or nobility for personal reasons. Therefore, the king wouldn't go into details, as he knew it was a delicate matter if Issei wasn't able to discuss it openly. The king decided that he would at least grant him complete freedom and permission to ask him for any favor he desired, no matter what it was, whenever the chestnut-haired man needed it. He also gave him the key to the royal library, filled with books on advanced magic of all kinds, and to the ancient workshop of the old alchemist who had once owned the castle centuries before. But it wasn't used by anyone of the same caliber as the old alchemist. The chestnut-haired man accepted. Openly. The chestnut tree accepted that gift from the king, since it was less ostentatious than the other things he wanted to give him. It was also interesting to be able to read any magic books I wanted and to practice alchemy in the workshop of the castle's former alchemist. For, as an old saying goes, knowledge is power if you know how to use it to your advantage. The problem with that offer was that Clarice kept following him around and wanting to learn more from her master, making Issei feel somewhat harassed by the princess. Even Issei himself underestimated his own magical abilities, since past events had left him with low self-confidence, and he didn't consider himself as strong as the people who had taught him. Aside from the excessive attention he received, he became more nervous than usual and uncomfortable to the point that he decided to leave the kingdom and take a personal journey to figure out what he should do with his life. He told Roral, who understood his son's desire to find himself and know what to do with his life. It was normal that with so many achievements, he didn't feel comfortable and didn't want to think that his life was only destined to strengthen others and be just a teacher watching others grow without seeing his own personal growth. The chestnut tree began to travel the world and discover what destinations his path held for him as an adventurer and immortal alongside his phoenix. He passed through several villages until he reached the meeting place of the demi-humans, half-beast people. There were also a few humans there living normal lives. He thought about joining the guild to earn money, but dismissed the idea since he would be easily recognized and he didn't want Clarice and Alice to come after him and drag him back home. And he scolded him for leaving the kingdom without saying goodbye. Although, knowing their attitudes and how attached they were to him, if he had said goodbye, they would have clung to his legs and prevented him from leaving. In his mind, he thought it was an exaggeration, but possible to imagine such a situation, but the more he thought about it, the more he believed it was better not to say goodbye. Besides, this was a personal desire he had to fulfill, having received so many achievements he felt he didn't deserve. They only made him doubt his abilities, and he wanted to achieve his own goals and see what to do with his immortal life. He considered the possibilities and remembered his healing abilities, which he had learned from his master, the cleric Estefan, known as the Holy Cleric for his great holy and healing power. He knew he would humble the power of a certain trio within the church. The chestnut-haired man remembered how difficult it was to learn this without having received a blessing as a child when he was baptized. But this was because his body, purified by the magna fruit he had eaten years ago, made his power purer and more malleable, a great advantage for using holy power. To the point of healing serious or minor wounds, regenerating limbs and organs, and saving someone from death and reviving them, it should only take as long as the body of the person to be revived had decomposed. Although his master forbade him from reviving anyone, especially those who had been dead for years, it would be disrespectful to the deceased. Issei's plan was to open a healing shop in place of rituals. He wanted to heal people, since medical treatment was expensive and there were always those who needed help. He wasn't going to start resurrecting people from their graves. He didn't want to be known as a grave robber. Furthermore, he wasn't worried about anyone trying to steal from him. He had learned a great deal from his master, the Shadow Thief. The Shadow Thief taught him how to disarm traps and trackers, how to steal whatever he wanted without being seen or noticed, and how to slip away and escape any danger situation. This was very useful because it allowed him to leave the kingdom completely unnoticed. While thinking this, he stole money from a thief who had robbed a little girl selling flowers. The thief didn't notice, and the brunette ended up stealing even his belt. When the thief realized he'd been robbed of both his money and his belt, his pants fell down, leaving him in embarrassment. Running to hide from the laughing crowd and the city guards, Issei struck the girl's head, leaving the money the thief had stolen in the basket. The girl knew Issei had helped her when he signaled her to keep quiet. She smiled, nodded, and gave Issei a flower. He nodded again and left, continuing on his way. Issei. Well, I made a good addition today, as the saying goes, a thief who steals from a thief is forgiven for 100 years. This would be an action worthy of Master Zephyr, the Shadow Thief. The chestnut tree was looking for a place to register its property, a suitable location to start his business. He just hoped trouble wouldn't come to him like bees to honey. While in the merchant's area, he learned that someone was selling a 2-story house. It wasn't too small, but it was suitable for what the chestnut tree needed. She bought it because her work as an adventurer made her technically a millionaire. Someone of her rank earned very well, but she didn't want to be lazy at home all day doing nothing. She'd die of boredom if she weren't immortal. She began crafting the furniture she needed with her magic, combining earth and water to make wooden pieces. And she used a magic bag her teacher Alizolith had given her, the one who taught her magic and alchemy. And on their first time exploring a cave dungeon, they had a tough time defeating some high-level specters. The reward chest contained magic crystals and a magic pouch that was like a pocket dimension in a bag. The chestnut-haired man began to take out his magic and alchemy equipment, which was quite useful for this situation. He also bought the most appropriate medical supplies, as he needed the right equipment for other types of injuries. Even though he didn't have a few modern items from his previous world, he could devise them in a special and surprising way with his magic. One day, while practicing his magic, he went a little overboard and accidentally cast an X-ray spell. And since he didn't use as much power as necessary, instead of seeing organs and bones, he ended up seeing his teacher's underwear by accident. Embarrassed, he just looked away, somewhat ashamed and disturbed. He had a bit of a problem seeing women without clothes, and that was because of things supernatural beings had done to him. But he shook his head, trying not to think about that past incident. He also prepared everything else, like shelves for healing positions, among other things. He even made a sign to indicate that this place was a special establishment. She was responsible for healing others, as well as selling protective and healing items to adventurers. She had managed to obtain the necessary permits, as she didn't want to operate clandestinely for the time being. It was better to avoid potential problems. Chapter 9. Previously. The chestnut tree was looking for a place to register its property, a suitable location to start his business. He just hoped trouble wouldn't come to him like bees to honey. While in the merchant's area, he learned that someone was selling a 2-story house. It wasn't too small, but it was suitable for what the chestnut tree needed. She bought it because her work as an adventurer made her technically a millionaire. Someone of her rank earned very well, but she didn't want to be lazy at home all day doing nothing. She'd die of boredom if she weren't immortal. She began crafting the furniture she needed with her magic, combining earth and water to make wooden pieces. And she used a magic bag her teacher Alizolith had given her, the one who taught her magic and alchemy. And on their first time exploring a cave dungeon, they had a tough time defeating some high-level specters. The reward chest contained magic crystals and a magic pouch that was like a pocket dimension in a bag. The chestnut-haired man began to take out his magic and alchemy equipment, which was quite useful for this situation. He also bought the most appropriate medical supplies, as he needed the right equipment for other types of injuries. Even though he didn't have a few modern items from his previous world, he could devise them in a special and surprising way with his magic. One day, while practicing his magic, he went a little overboard and accidentally cast an X-ray spell. And since he didn't use as much power as necessary, instead of seeing organs and bones, he ended up seeing his teacher's underwear by accident. Embarrassed, he just looked away, somewhat ashamed and disturbed. He had a bit of a problem seeing women without clothes, and that was because of things supernatural beings had done to him. But he shook his head, trying not to think about that past incident. He also prepared everything else, like shelves for healing positions, among other things. He even made a sign to indicate that this place was a special establishment. She was responsible for healing others, as well as selling protective and healing items to adventurers. She had managed to obtain the necessary permits, as she didn't want to operate clandestinely for the time being. It was better to avoid potential problems. The chestnut tree had everything ready to receive its first customers. It was just a matter of waiting for someone to arrive. Although hours passed and no one came, this was probably normal for the chestnut tree, since it had just opened. So, it closed early and began strolling through the city, looking at the shops, places, and people. Then it came to an area that was a commercial thoroughfare, with people and boats, like several canals running through the city, something that caught its attention. But then she heard people stopping to watch a mermaid singing. She figured it was normal, since there were different creatures living in the city, and the mermaid probably earned money by singing and swimming. She remembered her teacher telling her that some mermaids could take human form, while others lived in secluded places like the ocean or the sea. So this mermaid must be the one who can take human form. So he stayed to listen to her sing. She was a mermaid woman with long black hair, pale yellow eyes with redder eyes, pale skin, and she wore red and black accents on her clothes and her mermaid tail. Issei. A mermaid, that's the first time I've seen one. Interesting. But he listened to the mermaid's song. Although her voice was beautiful, he could hear a faint scratching in her throat. He sensed that she might have a problem with her throat. After the show, he approached the mermaid. He congratulated her on her performance, and she thanked him for enjoying it. He told her he was a healer and heard her voice rasp. She was surprised that he noticed her throat wasn't well, so she let him examine it. He examined her and, using a scanning spell he had created, scanned the mermaid's body, noticing that her throat was slightly swollen and a kind of rash on her neck. Where her gills should be, he recognized that, being a mermaid, her skin was very sensitive to the sun. And from singing for so long in the sun, she developed allergies and inflammation in her throat because she couldn't breathe properly. He told her she should stay in shady places with less sun, because if she continued like this, the inflammation would worsen and obstruct her breathing. And being underwater could cause her to die from not being able to breathe properly. From her magic bag came a special cream she created with alchemy. It was waterproof, so she could wear it while performing without risking her allergies flared up again from prolonged sun exposure. The mermaid applied the cream to her neck, and as she did, the allergy marks disappeared instantly, and she felt she could breathe more easily. Surprised at feeling relief so quickly, she realized the chestnut cream was a great healer. She appreciated it if she blushed for not having asked his name. Issei. Don't worry, my name is Issei, nice to meet you, and you? Mermaid. You can call me Carmen, it's a pleasure, Issei-san, thank you for your help, how much do I owe you? Issei. It's not necessary, I helped you selflessly, not so you would pay me. The mermaid was surprised by what she said. Normally, no one healed anyone for free, as some healers were expensive, especially those who could perform alchemical procedures. She looked at the chestnut-haired man. He was a very kind person if he had helped her selflessly. She smiled, thanking the chestnut-haired man, and told him that next time she needed him to heal her, she would pay him. The chestnut-haired man chuckled softly at her attitude, said goodbye, and went home. When he arrived, he prepared some dinner before going to bed, but he felt that something strange was happening in his house, as some things had been moved. He lived alone, not with anyone else. He thought it might be a thief, but dismissed that possibility. If something valuable had been stolen, everything was out of place, and besides, he would have been attacked. So a thief couldn't have done it. A magical beast couldn't have done it either, since it would have broken things and released its mana essence, but that couldn't be it either. It had to be that the house, being so old, might have a specter. The chestnut tree almost placed candles and a trail of salt in a circle to summon the specter. For as far as they knew, specters were spirits that remained wandering the earth, bound to the place where they died by unfinished business or negative emotions. Furthermore, specters were spirits like ancient dog ghosts whose power grew from their resentment at dying or from the suffering they endured in life, unable to rest in peace. These could be almost like reapers who harvest souls, but they should only be found in dungeons. Not in an old house, and we see them as specters, not high-level ghosts. The windows began opening and closing incessantly, papers flew through the air, and the salt circle glowed. Candles flickered on and off, and a specter appeared within a ball of blue energy inside the salt circle created by the chestnut tree. But this was no ordinary woman. She was dressed in maid's clothes with sharp tentacles sprouting from her back. She had a demonic face, and a bluish aura emanated from what were her eyes and mouth. The skin on her hands was as thin as bones and claws, and from her arms up, they appeared rotten, like cracked stone. Her hair was silver, somewhat long, and curly. Spectre? Who dares to enter my house of the great Lizalith, queen of the specters? After Issei introduced himself to the spectre, she was angered by his audacity and not kneeling before her, as she was about to kill him by launching an attack. But the brown-haired boy simply used his holy magic, which he had learned from his master, the holy cleric, nearly purifying the spectre completely. She was terrified when she saw that he had almost completely disintegrated her arm, and it took her a long time to regenerate. The chestnut-haired man told her that was his weakest attack. This frightened her. She couldn't believe he would say such a thing. If he said it was his weakest, it meant that if he attacked her again with that spell, he would undoubtedly destroy her, leaving nothing but her ashes. The spectre had no choice but to surrender to the chestnut-haired man, lest she disappear forever. She introduced herself politely, though somewhat nervous due to his holy power. Upon shaking his hand, she formed a spiritual contract with him, causing her form to revert to normal. She was a woman with silvery white hair, with silvery blue eyes, thin pink lips, and horns on her head. Her hair was long and slightly curly. She wore black clothes with gold and white details, a blue ribbon tied around her waist that held up her skirt, blue gems on her necklace, and a good figure. The chestnut-haired man was a little surprised to see the spectre's form. He hadn't expected it to look like this. After the introductions and understanding that he had accidentally made a spiritual contract with the spectre and that it would only serve him for life, it was something he hadn't anticipated. From that day on, Lizalith became the brunette servant and friend, as well as his contract spirit. Although the spectre told him to just call her Liz, which he accepted, she asked if she could call him by a diminutive of his name, like a nickname. He thought about it for a moment, but as soon as he remembered that he used to call her Issei, he fell silent for a moment, bitterly recalling that, and told Liz that just calling him Issei was enough for him. She accepted without hesitation, although she sensed something hidden in his gaze, but she didn't want to pry into the life of her summoner and friend without permission. Because of her form, no one would suspect she was a spectre, and she could also help the chestnut-haired man with the clinic. Although no one had arrived yet, they couldn't lose faith that a client would come, but after this, they closed early to go to the forest to gather medicinal plants to make more medicine. Since Liz was the chestnut-haired man's personal spirit, she could go with him wherever he wanted, which was useful, and she was excited to be able to go out and experience the outside world again. Most spirits can't leave the place where they died unless they transcend to the other world or have a summoner. The chestnut-haired boy heard sounds of a fight in the distance. Seeing Liz, who nodded, they went toward the noise. Upon arriving, they saw a dragon girl with red hair streaked with orange and yellow, resembling flames. She had horns on her head, almost like antlers, and bright clear yellow eyes. Sparks and faint flames flickered from her wings and tail, and her clothing appeared to be made of her own scales. The girl was injured, clutching her arm, which had suffered a lethal poisonous wound. The hole in her arm was so large that you could almost see the bone. Her veins were as black as coal, and it was clear that she had difficulty moving it and that it hurt. And he could barely defend himself against his attacker, a monster that resembled a plant golem with the body of a rock beast, like a dragon or salamander. Its head looked like roots with banana-like stems and leaves on its arms, legs, back, and head. Its legs seemed to be made of rock, and its chest seemed to glow with a phosphorescent light, which must have been the monster's core. Aside from being a monster that reached the size of an earth dragon, those were almost 20 meters tall, and even wider. The monster had long, wide arms with feathers sprouting from them. Its fingers were sharp claws, white with phosphorescent tones of blue, yellow, and green that seemed almost toxic if they touched you. And perhaps that was the reason the dragon girl was injured. The girl seemed about to faint, unable to bear the pain of her wound. Her vision was blurred, and just as she was about to fall backward, the chestnut-haired man caught her and pulled her away from the danger zone, handing her to Liz to care for. He returned to face the monster, which lunged to attack the chestnut-haired man, intending to cut or poison him with its claws. The chestnut-haired man used defensive magic to defend himself against those attacks, surprising the monster, since no one could possess such a perfect level of defensive magic. Because it was a difficult and uncommon type of magic, most people only used it to enhance their senses and abilities. But to use that magic at the level of the chestnut-haired man, one had to have studied magic for years and have a deep understanding of the functions of defensive magic. The chestnut-haired man, using his creation magic and remembering the teachings of his master, the chaotic archer, created a bow made of his magic and at the same time concentrated his power into a fire arrow that he fired with such lethality that it seemed like a missile, hitting the monster directly in the chest and even more in its core, causing the monster to explode. To see that all that remained was a small salamander made of runes with jade-like colors in the runes. The chestnut-haired boy was surprised to see the rune, as they are very rare to find. He wondered if the monster was the salamander. Why had it attacked the dragon girl? Unless someone had transformed that monster into the salamander to cause chaos. Someone must have already turned the salamander into a chimera, since it seemed to be the combination of parts and powers of several monsters. And the salamander, being a core creature that gives its energy to both itself and others, was used as the main core for that reason. These salamanders already lived in ancient ruins, creatures capable of opening them since they were part of the ruins themselves. The chestnut tree made a tamer's contract with the salamander to make it his new guardian beast. It was clear the salamander liked the chestnut tree for having helped it return to normal. The salamander, happy to have a new master, climbed onto the chestnut tree, getting into the chestnut tree's jacket pocket. Daha croaked happily, having a new friend. The chestnut tree smiled at its two magical beasts, returning to Liz and the dragon girl, so he could heal her wound. The dragon was suffering, sweating profusely and weak, and she felt distrustful of the chestnut-haired man, as he was a stranger to her. She tried to attack him, but he grabbed her wrist, holding her to prevent her from doing anything foolish. He explained that he only wanted to heal her. She looked into his eyes and saw that he had no ulterior motives, so she allowed him to heal her. Issei explained that her arm was badly damaged in her fight with the monster, and the poison had spread too far. To prevent it from spreading further, he had to amputate her arm. Nervously, she asked why she wasn't purified of the poison. He explained that the wound was too deep to be purified of the poison, and she didn't have enough energy to endure the purification process. She understood that the situation was difficult and allowed the chestnut-haired man to cut off her arm. He created a small dagger with his magna, which was small and thin, and performed the amputation of the girl's arm perfectly, since he had applied sleep magic to serve as anesthesia and prevent her from waking up and feeling pain from the amputation. Then, using some of his energy, the chestnut-haired boy regenerated the girl's arm fiber by fiber and cell by cell, restoring it to its original state. The dragon girl was astonished by this and even more so by the boy's medical skills. After healing her, she set aside her dragon-like demeanor and introduced herself to him properly. Miralise, the dragon princess Arithia's bodyguard, introduced herself. She explained that she had come to this forest on behalf of her kingdom's guild, as there had been many disappearances of people and adventurers who ventured into it. However, she hadn't expected it to be because of such a monster that made people disappear, and that if it hadn't been for the chestnut-haired man who arrived in time to help her, she didn't know what would have happened to her afterward. Perhaps she would have died like the others, or perhaps she would have died wounded and poisoned by the monster's venom. She asked what had happened with the monster. The chestnut-haired man explained what had happened and how the monster was the salamander, and his theory of how the salamander could have become that monster. The girl was shocked to learn this, but it gave her more ideas that it could be an organization experimenting with magical beasts to instigate some kind of rebellion or coup. But she couldn't be sure of anything, as they were just theories and speculations. The girl wanted to invite the chestnut-haired boy and Liz to lunch for having saved her and taken such good care of her when she was in danger. The chestnut-haired boy wanted to refuse, saying that he had only done the right thing and that she didn't have to thank him for what he had done. The girl kept insisting until the chestnut-haired boy finally agreed, admitting that dragons are stubborn. They arrived at the Dragon Kingdom, which was a few kilometers away from their previous location, through a fire portal that Miralise used. Upon arriving at the castle, the red-haired dragon was embraced by Arithia, the dragon princess. She was a woman with a beautiful figure, long white hair streaked with dark silver, and clear crystalline blue eyes. Part of her hair covered one eye, but because her eyes were so bright, it was still slightly visible. She had black dragon horns on her head, and her wings and tail were black, white, and silver with almost black-gray highlights. Her clothing was also in those colors, with pieces of armor made of crystals and light blue diamonds. Her skin was a pure grayish-white, smooth yet striking. And her lips were a soft gray. The white-haired dragon hugged Miralise with concern, checking her over and asking if she was alright. The Redeed told the princess she was fine, not to worry, but after Mirrlees introduced Issei and Liss and explained what happened in the forest with the monster, the white-haired dragon shook Mirrlees angrily for doing something so dangerous and going alone without her company for her safety. The Redeed told her that as a princess, she shouldn't risk doing those kinds of things that were the responsibility of her bodyguard. But Arithia asked if she thought she was weak since she was the strongest of all the dragons, second only to her father, the king. Mirrlees just lowered her head, ashamed for having worried her friend. The white-haired dragon added that although she shouldn't have gone on a mission alone without telling anyone, she would have been more at ease if she had gone with someone else instead of alone. But she told her she was at least happy she was alive and home safe. She said she was a friend to her, not just her bodyguard, but almost a sister, and they'd known each other since they were children. And she didn't want to lose her. The Redeed hugged the blonde, apologizing for her arrogant behavior and for not considering the consequences. After that, he took Issei and Liss out to dinner to thank them for helping Mirrlees and dealing with the forest monster. The chestnut-haired boy said they only did the right thing. After dinner, using a teleportation spell, he and Liss returned home. Before leaving, they were spotted by Arithia's younger sister, a girl with long black hair and red eyes, part of which covered her right eye. Her skin was the same color as her sister's. Her black dragon antlers had turquoise accents, and her long dragon tail was the same color as her horns. Her outfit was black and white, with black stockings and black heels. She was somewhat shy and reserved, had a good figure like her older sister, and her dragon appearance resembled that of a sea dragon. The dragon's name is Sylvia, but she prefers to be called Sylvie. She hasn't introduced herself to the others because she suffers from an ancient curse, an illness. This curse is causing her magical circuits to malfunction, preventing her from growing stronger. The stronger she becomes, the more her vitality she loses. That's why her father doesn't let her go out. He doesn't want anything bad to happen to her. Because of the curse she inherited, which was passed down through generations, survival became increasingly difficult. Some nobles looked down on his youngest daughter for being born weak, and with a curse that made her weaker every time she grew stronger, she would risk her life. The king always put the nobles in their place, for he would not allow anyone to look down on one of his daughters. The dark-haired girl with her eye covered was dark blue with golden magical runes. She could see into the hearts of others, a birthright inherited from her mother. She could see the brown-haired boy had kindness in his heart, but it was surrounded by darkness. She could see his heart. It was black with many cracks, something that both moved her and made her cry as she wondered who could have hurt him so deeply. She wondered how someone could live with a heart like that and what so many things had been done to the chestnut-haired boy in the past to leave his heart in that state. But she saw a glimmer of light. It meant there were people who brought light into his life and made him happy, even though his heart was like that. She learned that her brother had saved Mirrlees and that his medical skills were astonishing. Sylvie asked her sister if it was possible that he could be the one to break her curse. They had tried everything to break her curse, and no mage, alchemist, or healer had been able to do anything about it. Arithia told her sister that she didn't know, but she knew the chestnut-haired man was more special than he seemed. She hugged her sister with a sad but hopeful look, believing that one day her sister would be free of the curse and could live the life she was destined to live. A few weeks later, the chestnut-haired man's business was thriving. Many people had heard about what he did with the mermaid, how he saved the dragon princess's bodyguard, and his good deeds in the slums. He was receiving a lot of attention, but the chestnut-haired man found himself in a strange situation. He was being interrogated by a woman with fox ears and tails, a kitsune with dark purple skin and eyes. She wore black clothing with violet, purple, and gold accents, and had a well-proportioned figure. The girl belonged to a mercenary organization that had the chestnut-haired man in mind for some purpose. She almost ended up kidnapping him, but he didn't flinch. He didn't get very far, though, because he managed to trick her into being the one to kidnap her. They handed her over, tying her hands and feet to a chair while Liss watched, asking her why she wanted to kidnap her master. Chapter 10. Traitors Remembering the Past. On a stormy night, a meeting was taking place in a castle in the supernatural world. There were various beings present, including angels, fallen angels, demons, dragons, yokai, Asgardians, Olympians, Egyptians, and other factions from all ancient mythologies. Everyone was silent. No one said a word. It was as if they had a lump in their throats. And when they tried to say something, nothing came out. Not a sound was uttered. It was as if their bodies were telling them they'd done enough and it was best to remain silent. They only looked at each other with somber and depressing expressions. On the table were some photos of a chestnut-haired man, smiling. Another was of a small chestnut-haired boy with an empty smile. The last photo was of a chestnut-haired man, somewhat older, with a broken and mad smile, so broken that it no longer seemed if he was smiling or crying. No one could lift their head and look at those photos. They frightened them and made them feel utterly disgusted with themselves. It was as if the eyes in each photo pierced their hearts. As if they were asking, why were we killed? Why did we pay for a mistake that wasn't ours? Was our existence a sin? Shouldn't we have been born? Why did you fail us? Why did you abandon us? Why did you betray us? Why did you humiliate us? Weren't we enough for you? In their minds, they replayed every word said to them, every damned word, insult, or reproach against someone who had never judged or criticized them for anything. She hadn't even defended herself, letting them attack her because they still held a place in her heart, but now that place was shattered into 1,000 pieces they couldn't find, much less mend as before. Nearly 50 years had passed since what they did to the chestnut-haired boy. His former family remembered his early life perfectly. Filled with fear, sadness, and regret for their past actions, they remembered how, from the moment their son was born, they had literally abandoned him and confined him to suffer. His mother remembers how on the day he was born, instead of saying, "I will take care of you and love you forever," she simply said, "I hope you won't be a burden in our lives." She recalls that at that time, she and her wife didn't want another child, but upon learning that Issei was going to be born, she had no choice but to accept him because she didn't want to have an abortion and become sterile due to carelessness. But she remembered how she showed her children Yu and Yuko, how they had more talent than her youngest child. She remembered how her other children would get a bad grade and she would tell them they would do better next time, but when Issei got almost all the points and only lost 1 or 2, she would yell at him, saying that if he cared about them, he would try harder and get a perfect grade, throwing the exam in the poor boy's face. He remembered when the chestnut-haired boy told her he loved her, calling her mom, but she told him to call her Mrs. Hayate and that she wasn't the mother of an undesirable like him. It broke the little boy's heart and he could only manage a sad smile, nodding his small fists, holding back his tears. He remembered what his mother, the woman who gave him life, had said to him, yet she looked at him with contempt worse than a plague. She remembers how he apologized for things she knew weren't his fault, but she preferred to blame him instead of admitting he was right. She remembers his tears when he begged for her help and she ignored him and pretended not to hear him. It was almost the same with her husband. She remembers how, instead of feeling love when holding their son, he only saw him as a burden to himself and everyone else. She can't remember the last time she praised her son for something or said anything nice or kind to him. She doesn't even remember the last time she hugged him and said, "I love you, son." All she remembers is, "You are a disgrace to this family. You are not part of us. You are not like us, don't even consider us your equals. I always knew you would be an embarrassment to everyone. You were just a burden to us. You are not like your brothers, you are just their shadows. How can anyone have someone so pathetic as a son?" He only remembered the beatings, the mistreatment, the punishments, the humiliations, and the mockery he inflicted on the boy, hitting him or locking him in a dark place. When the boy begged him to cut himself properly, he didn't want to be in such a dark place. He was afraid, he didn't want to be in the dark. His sister remembered how he always helped her with a smile, asking for nothing in return. She only used him as her servant when she needed him or spread rumors about him behind his back, getting him into trouble and causing him to be punished. She let many strangers beat the chestnut-haired boy mercilessly when she, as his sister, should have cared for him and protected him. She shouldn't have let them get to him. Remember that in battle he always protected her and she took advantage of this, using him as bait or a human shield to save themselves. She would leave enemies wounded so she could deliver the final blow, disregarding the chestnut-haired man's safety. And at school, they made his life miserable, making everyone mock and humiliate him. To the point that the brunette ended up in the hospital more than once. Her older brother had the same thoughts. All their lives they used Issei as a training dummy or made him the one to solve their punishments for them, taking advantage of his kindness to inhuman levels. He remembers how he always rubbed it in the brunette's face how the girls he always confessed to preferred to be with him rather than with someone better than his useless, unwanted younger brother. The girls who had rejected the protagonist more than once were crying, depressed. But they didn't make a sound, only their tears falling with great pain and emptiness. They remembered how he had given them gifts, letters, and special tokens, or given them flowers that were each of their favorites, or how he had tried hard to learn to cook their favorite meals. But every attempt was scorned by them. He had shown great patience and love for each of them, enduring mistreatment and humiliation to the point of being publicly ridiculed. Declaring his love more than 100 times, but as they say, love is like a plant. You take care of it every day, but if you neglect it and forget it, it will wither more and more until there is nothing left but a pile of thorns in its place. People often filmed him for making a fool of himself by confessing his feelings to girls, only to be rejected time and again without compassion, making him a clown to many. He was seen as shameful, weak, without achievements, without courage, without any special talent. They ended up torturing him in various ways and making him their personal slave, giving him missions impossible even for them, but the fact that he managed to accomplish them as a human infuriated them. Even if he didn't return completely unharmed, he always arrived alive. Every mission or task they made him do was torture for him, to the point that each time he returned, his eyes lost more and more of their natural light. Seeing a hint of remorse in their actions towards him, they began to treat him better. But it wasn't long before others arrived and made them realize that the protagonist was just a waste of time and effort, lacking anything special to represent him, and that without them, he would be nothing. This caused everyone to despise him again like never before, displaying a final, indifferent attitude unlike anything they had ever seen. When he arrived at a meeting, everyone looked at him indifferently. The chestnut-haired man asked what was happening. They told him he had been demoted to the rank of a regular soldier and that he shouldn't address them with familiarity and that he was now just a simple servant to them. They added that there were more capable people who could possibly hold the title of the best better than him. The chestnut-haired man had no choice but to accept it with a sad smile, and his gaze lowered. He spoke politely to his superiors, who smiled coldly, seeing his place. Besides, his former family had taken away his surname. They could no longer tolerate someone of his stature being related to them, those who were superior. Something he also accepted with what little remained of his heart, which was breaking more and more each day. Until the day everything changed when the women he once loved were to marry others, but instead, they revealed that he worked for the Chaos Brigade. A war ensued, and the chestnut-haired man was forced to fight for the place he still called home. Despite many casualties, he did not surrender, facing many supernatural enemies alone. Reaching those who planned all the chaos, even though his body was wounded, he made a great superhuman effort to defeat them, succeeding. Almost falling on the battlefield, the supernatural beings couldn't bear that they had all been saved thanks to a human. And that the people of Elio saw them as incompetent, locking the chestnut-haired man in a dungeon. He didn't understand why they were doing this when he had saved them. But when his wounds went untreated, he began to vomit blood, convulse, and die. But just as they managed to escape, Rizabin appeared to show the supernatural beings how useless they were, unlike the chestnut-haired boy who never saw what he was always doing without receiving anything in return, not even a measly thank you from them. They watched as Rizabin killed the brunette right in front of them, leaving them stunned. Before leaving, the silver-haired man said, "This is a gift for the brunette, so his poor, tormented soul can finally rest and be free from this world that doesn't see his potential." Knowing he himself would never be capable of killing himself, it was better if someone else did it. Upon realizing their terrible mistake, the supernatural beings attempted to rectify it, using the power of Great Red in office to create a new body for the chestnut-haired boy's soul. His old body was beyond repair, and the way Rizabin killed him had reduced it to ashes. But thanks to those two useless lizards, they managed to create a new body for the chestnut-haired man. Without considering the possible consequences, they made it so that the chestnut-haired man's soul, having been so badly damaged by them, couldn't be given a body of a different age. So they made him have the body of a child so that his soul could adapt better and heal little by little. But unfortunately for everyone, the supernatural beings messed up again. Since he was a child and not his current age, he temporarily lost his powers, reverting to being a normal human. To them, he was useless. It was as if he had reverted to what he was as a child. Being neglected in the most unimaginable ways. Almost letting the child starve to death in a place so dark and cold that it frightened him, but as the weeks and months passed, he adapted so much to the darkness that he saw it as more of a home than the one he had now. Unable to bear the hunger any longer, the chestnut-haired boy ran away to the faction's party, where they were celebrating the defeat of the traitors. But when one of the gods discovered the chestnut-haired boy stealing food from the table, he alarmed everyone and scolded him for being such a useless piece of trash at a party without an invitation. It was disrespectful for someone without power or status to be at a party with such powerful beings whose level he could never even dream of or reach. The little boy explained that he was very hungry and that he was just going to eat something and leave and wouldn't bother them. But for them, what was done, and they would punish him for interrupting their night. One of the gods grabbed him by the arm, dragging him to the garden and throwing the boy into a puddle. The god dropped what the boy was eating, making the food covered in mud. The little boy watched sadly as such cruelty and humiliation unfolded before the others, who only laughed at the boy's humiliation. The god trampled the child's food, splattering it with mud. The god took out a piece of meat and the little boy looked at it hungrily, unable to bear the hunger he felt after so long without eating. The god told him that as punishment for what he did at the party, he should do something to make them laugh, and he would be forgiven and could leave with the piece of meat. The little boy, hesitant because of the malicious looks from the others, lay down because he was starving. The god told him he had to take off his clothes and roll in the puddle like a pig, then run 10 laps around the mansion and beg forgiveness on his knees for daring, a mere mortal, to interrupt the party of beings like them. The little boy, with tears in his eyes, had no choice but to accept. On one hand, he looked at himself with hunger. On the other, he was consumed by the immense humiliation that would befall him if he agreed. Besides his family, the others told him that refusing the god's request would bring him punishment. They beat him with chains to force him to do what they asked. The little boy, terrified, had no choice but to comply. As soon as he finished undressing, he felt horrible stares, watching him in a way that frightened and disturbed him. But he was snapped out of his thoughts when the god kicked him into the mud puddle, covering the boy's entire body in mud. The god stepped on his back, laughing that this was where he belonged, in the mud like pigs beneath their feet, and that he should never dream of trying to be like them, because he would only humiliate himself if he did. The kick left the boy with broken ribs, and his spine, stepped on by the god, creaked in every direction. He heard everyone laughing at him, saying he looked like a real pig, and was then forced to run around the castle 10 times. To add insult to injury, they made him crawl on all fours like a real pig. Everyone saw him, and many were dying of laughter at the sight. Some clutched their stomachs with laughter, others covered their mouths, laughing uncontrollably, hurling nasty words, nicknames, and insults at the little boy, making his punishment worse. Each word was another crack in his heart. Each word was a new personal torment for him. He could only cry, his eyes losing their light, almost becoming completely empty. After serving his punishment, the god who had promised the little boy a piece of meat made him eat it from the mud like a pig. After such a humiliating punishment, the boy never left the place where he was imprisoned. He didn't want to suffer that again. However, he soon began to sing, for women of all backgrounds, seeing him so innocent and defenseless, seeing him naked, couldn't help but desire him. These women were insane, doing unspeakable things to the little boy, raping him. And if he refused to have sex with them, they attacked him, tearing off pieces of his skin one by one in a painful manner, rubbing salt into his wounds, and beating him mercilessly. The little boy, his gaze now lost and broken, like that of someone dead, said nothing, not even a sound or whimper. He no longer resisted, he felt nothing, to the point of letting himself be raped, his mind shattered like an empty shell of what it once was. They had him with a chain collar around his neck as if he were their dog or pet, forcing him to fulfill every perverse and morbid desire or outlandish fetish they had. Besides not wanting to get pregnant by him since he was a boy, they had castrated the little boy in such a painful way. Besides, whenever they visited his cell to play, they brought many adult toys which they tried on him in every way imaginable. But the other men began to suspect them, and to avoid being discovered, they lied, saying that the boy was a monster and that he had tried to take advantage of them more than once. It wasn't true, but no one doubted their words. Accepting that the child would be exiled from that world and die in the void, and that his fall into the void, perhaps at the hands of some monster, would be more useful as monster food than as any of their own. That's how the little boy ended up suffering, and how he ended up being thrown into the void and ending up in the other world, with the help of the mysterious woman who gave him another chance to have a better life than the one he had with the supernatural beings. At first, the supernatural beings were happy to be rid of him. But they had a bad feeling, a sense that they had made a grave mistake and would pay dearly for it, but many arrogant ones didn't take it seriously. But then Rizabin's attacks began, and he showed the human world what the factions had done to an innocent person. Chaos erupted in the world. Humans were horrified to see horrible beings commit such dreadful acts against one of their own, especially against a child who had been a child twice and suffered such hell. Humans had weapons, and scientists were developing even better weapons to rival the supernatural beings and prevent anyone else from suffering the same fate as that poor child. Many humans who were parents of the young people at the academy did what the chestnut-haired boy did, which many parents threw their children out of the houses, saying that the bear raised people, not demons and bullies, who made someone's life a hell for believing stupid rumors that they didn't know if they were true or not. And that they should put themselves in the chestnut tree's place and see if they would dedicate a single day of their lives to it. Many will lower their heads and remain silent, finding no way to protest against that logic. Supernatural beings could not go to the human world, and many stopped believing in them because of their actions, causing a great imbalance in the factions as they lost the support of humans. The people of each faction no longer trusted their leaders, but they trusted the woman who had defiled the poor child in the most inhuman and disgusting ways. Many women hugged their children in fear that these flying, whoring, or bitchy bitches in heat, child desecrators, would dare to do the same to their own children. Gaining even more of a bad reputation, many of the couples who were married divorced. Unable to bear each other's sins, not only causing suffering to an innocent person in every way, but also deceiving their partners and enjoying raping a 4-year-old child, the situation deteriorated. The woman who saved Issei years ago watched the chaos caused by those who betrayed the chestnut-haired boy. Many blamed themselves for their past actions, which had broken the alliance and left the situation precarious, hanging by a thread. The hooded woman, the one who had saved the chestnut-haired boy years ago, was watching all of this. This woman was a goddess, the goddess of death and the underworld, the world where the chestnut-haired boy now resided. This woman's name was Persephone, but she was unmarried and had no connection to the factions. This was the woman who had saved our protagonist years before. She knew that sooner or later karma would catch up with them for what they had done to the chestnut-haired boy, and she reveled in the suffering of these cowardly and treacherous beings. She knew that one day Issei would have to face his past, but she wanted to remind the factions that there will always be someone who sees their sins. And that sooner or later everything in this life is paid for, and that if you hurt someone, it will be your sin, and their existence or memory will be that sin that will never be forgotten and will follow them until the end of their days. The woman, using what little spiritual energy remained of Issei in that world, molded it for her own use. She wanted to serve as a reminder to the factions that Hamas must forget whom they harm. Creating a shadowy clone of the chestnut-haired man was his teenage self, but with a twisted, emotionless, and empty gaze. It displayed all the negative emotions and pain from each of the past inflicted wounds upon him. In the meeting room, everything grew darker than usual. The sun moved, and the full moon glowed an almost earthy orange, yet brilliant. Everyone wondered what was happening. Was it an enemy or a surprise attack? They didn't know. They looked around, but they weren't looking at anyone. Yet they saw. The shadowy Issei that Persephone created surprised and shocked everyone upon seeing him after so long, and in his condition. They wondered what had happened to him, unaware that the wounds were the ones they themselves had inflicted. Many wanted to touch him, hug him, and ask for his forgiveness. Others cut their eyes to confirm whether it was a dream or not. Others weren't sure what they were seeing. They thought it was their conscience playing a cruel trick on them, tormenting them for their past mistakes. They felt that this wasn't Issei. He wouldn't act this way. But what did they know? They wouldn't know if he yelled at them, confronted them, exploded in anger, cried, or broke down emotionally in front of them. Many tried to make him disappear, thinking he was an illusion, but they couldn't as they were no match for Persephone's power. They watched as the supposed Issei began to sing a song with a voice so heavy with negative emotions, pain, and suffering, that guilt gnawed at them from the very depths of their being. Shadow Issei knew. This love is just beginning. You're still hidden. And I must decipher you. He began to sing in a slow, subdued voice, his appearance shifting to the somewhat older Issei from one of the photos on the table, the age he was when he died in his original body. He sang with such a subdued and sad calm that it enveloped everyone in a profound sadness and loneliness, feeling as if the dark walls of the place were widening, trapping them in an immense emptiness. They wondered if this was how Issei felt when he was alone in the darkness. This was the emptiness and darkness that he had always carried. Issei, shadow. Fourth. The heart is growing. I see you a little more. You look beautiful in profile. That reminded the girls of how he always showed his sincere love for them, his concern for them, his honesty in understanding them, helping them, being by their side, and protecting them. Gloomy Issei. Moon, moon, moon. Give me happiness and fortune. Asleep among your dunes again. It was as if he were speaking to them, telling them they were his moon. Reminding them how he always smiled at them and said kind and sincere things to them, while others only said things and looked at their bodies inappropriately. And even with his flaws, he loved them sincerely. His voice as he sang that part heightened the emotion. Singing not with a broken heart but with a hollow empty smile, gave many people goosebumps. But the emotion she sang, as if making them see her emotions and pay attention to her while she danced floating, teaching them and showing them in magic circles each of the memories that she wanted to convey to them in that song. Gloomy Issei. Moon, moon, moon. You are the lighthouse that lights my way. Among the confusing darkness. Guide me. His voice echoed everywhere, as if he were singing all around. And everyone felt hands gripping their shoulders, as if telling them they couldn't escape or leave without hearing him. In that part it was as if he were telling the girls that they used to be his light and now they are only his condemnation, that they put him in darkness and cut off the path he should follow. Grim Issei. Luminescent full moon. You spelled me in bright phase. I won't lose your love. Not even during the waning moon. The girls were horrified to see the monster, each scar inflicted by everyone in the room, showing them all how each one had made that mark on their body. Seeing themselves do those things, they smiled maliciously and sadistically, or with cold indifference, making them look like monsters, so much so that many couldn't even recognize themselves. And accepting that they were capable of doing such things without hesitation or remorse from the beginning was even worse. Gloomy Issei. And even if everything ends. And I will no longer see your face. The cycle will return instantly. When I met you, new moon. Making him remember, no matter how much pain they inflicted, they always came up with something new to make him suffer, repeating the same cycle of pain over and over. Ensuring he never forgot how he met each of them, thus forming this endless cycle. Gloomy Issei. Well, you know very well. I will dream of you. For centuries and centuries. I will always love you. Well you know. I will dream of you. For centuries and centuries. Even though you can't see me. She sang that part with a voice so broken it distorted in their ears. And every night she dreamed of them, remembering every word they said, creating an endless cycle in her mind. No matter how much time passed, it wasn't something that could be erased, much less forgotten. It was impossible to hide, like trying to hide the sun with a finger. Gloomy Issei. A. Moon, moon, moon. Give me happiness and fortune. Asleep among your dunes again. Oh. Moon, moon, moon. You are the lighthouse that lights my way. Among the confusing darkness. Guide me. He said it, singing that part in a slow, deep way, staggering like a dead man in front of them with one hand on his face, only seeing his mouth, as if he were mocking them or reproaching them for what they did to him in this endless century that was his life for them. Shadow Issei. All processes. They have a beginning and an end. Because everything that is born. He has to die. He said it with a lively, excited tone, accompanied by laughter, reminding the supernatural beings that they will all die someday and are not completely immortal. Gloomy Issei. But today you are here. Just like last night. Their process repeats itself. And our love is recycled. He said it as a reminder that this painful process is repeated here endlessly, just as he told the girls that for them his love was recycled, that they threw it away whenever they wanted and took it as if nothing had happened and molded it to their liking and threw it away again and did the same thing over and over again. Issei, Summer. And from here I'll be watching you. How you still shine. How do you cover yourself with your sheet? Blue my cold life. He said it as if he were telling them that even if he wasn't there, someone else would be watching them and observing them and seeing them, and more than anything, he saw how their mistakes shone, just like their sad and cold life. Gloomy Issei. It's a nightmare by day. And on nights of nostalgia. Your memory accompanies me. And it saves me from the fear of nothingness. He said it as if to remind them that for everything they did to him, his whole life, day and night, was a nightmare and a longing for an affection he wanted to have but was always denied, and that the company of each one condemned him to the fear of nothingness. Grim Issei. Moon, moon, moon. Give me happiness and fortune. Sleeping among your dunes. Again. Oh. Moon, moon, moon. You are the lighthouse that lights my way. Among the confusing darkness. Guide me. Moon. You are my light. You are my light. In the dark night. The song ended, and just as the shadowy Issei turned into white petals, disappearing before their eyes, the shadows released them, leaving them suddenly on the ground, their souls hanging by a thread. It made them feel as if they had just experienced the worst mental blow of their lives, a personal nightmare firsthand. Chapter 11. Returning to Issei and his possible kidnapping, although he was now at home, having attacked the purple-haired kitsune who had tried to kidnap him moments before. He was sitting drinking a cup of tea that Liz had served him, watching the kitsune hanging upside down, observed by the brown-haired boy and the specter. Issei. Well, kitsune girl, who are you and why did you try to kidnap me? Girl. Why should I tell you? She said it would be worse with a confident smile that she could free herself from the ropes, but she couldn't. Girl. But what the heck? Why can't I cut the rope so I can pray their metal? They look like normal ropes. Issei. They're made of an iron golem that holds the strongest ropes, it's not a big deal. He said, downplaying it, but the kitsune yelled back that nobody could make ropes like that since she combined iron with ropes. Issei. I just used the bones of an iron golem, I ground them to powder by combining them with magic to create the aberration, and they will combine to create the strongest ropes you can see. But I repeat, who are you? And why did you want to kidnap me? Girl. My name is Yuzuha. A gold rank adventurer, and the guild heard about you and your healing abilities and how you helped the dragon princess's bodyguard deal with a monster in the forest. The guild needs someone like you for a mission. Liz. And why not knock on the door to talk instead of kidnapping my master and lord? Yuzuha. It was to prevent him from refusing, since it's a guild order. It's important, which is why the king only chose healers for this matter and he didn't want him to refuse the request. Issei. Since you said your name, I'll tell you mine. I'm Issei, and specifically for the king, he needs healers. Yuzuha. That's because there's an adventurer ranking competition where they're looking for strong adventurers to join the royal court. That's why they need healers, since some of them are very intense and could get seriously injured. Issei thought about it for a moment. He knew that refusing would cause problems with the guild later. And even more so with the king, since as a healer, it was his job to handle this matter and he couldn't refuse a royal order. Besides, he could wear his hood and conceal his identity, avoiding many collateral problems if he didn't get into trouble. Issei. Okay, I accept to help with what you're asking. You're lucky I didn't have any magic traps, otherwise you wouldn't be alive. Yuzuha. Wait, I have a question. If you're a healer, how did you manage to capture me? Issei. I have thief skills, that's why I've had several masters. I'm more than just a healer, and you saw that. And like I said, don't show up at my house like that again without an invitation or even knocking. I don't like intruders who appear out of nowhere in my house. He said it in a serious tone, meaning he was serious. After he released the girl and she left, she looked at our protagonist with interest. His abilities were top-notch, something not many possess the talent or determination to reach at such a young age. Just use your mind. To achieve that level, you'd have to spend almost your entire life as an old man. She turned pale remembering the advice Issei had given her. In short, he told her that if she showed up at his house again like that, he wouldn't be responsible for what happened to her if she fell into one of his security traps. And she didn't even want to imagine the kind of traps the brunette had in his house. The next day, the chestnut tree went into the forest to gather some medicinal plants to make medicine. After collecting the necessary plants, it returned to the city, walking through the streets when it began to feel watched by someone. The chestnut tree hurried past to lose its pursuer. He couldn't use his abilities in a crowded place in case someone was following him and might take the people around him hostage to find him. He preferred to lose him in a more proper way, reaching an alley and looking in other directions. Seeing the empty place, he sighed slightly, thinking he had lost his pursuer. But then he felt a kunai whiz past him, which he had to dodge. The kunai became embedded in the wall, and the brunette looked in the direction it had likely been thrown, peering up at one of the houses. He saw a girl with reddish-brown hair and red eyes wearing ninja clothes with 2 katanas on her back who was watching him. She was the one who threw the kunai, but when the girl was about to tie it again, she barely blinked for a second and felt a sharp blade at her neck. To realize, the brunette was behind her with one of his daggers near her neck. Issei. If I were you, I wouldn't do anything stupid just to lose a hand and my head in one fell swoop. He said it seriously, his other dagger in the girl's right hand, dangerously grazing her skin. She was about to attack with more kunai to create a distraction and escape the brunette's grasp, but when she saw that he had discovered her escape attempt, she was surprised, realizing she was at a great disadvantage. Seeing that the brunette could be so fast as to disappear from her field of vision, his skills were on a completely different level than hers. The girl sighed, raising her hands in surrender. A few moments later, the chestnut-haired boy and the girl were talking, the girl slightly nervous as the boy's magical specters kept a watchful eye on her, as if they would attack the moment she dared to do anything against her master. Issei, now that things have calmed down, tell me who you are and why you were following me. He said it seriously, looking at the girl. Unknown. I'm Sekiko, and I'm from the Dark Guild. I was only following you because I wanted to see how good your recruitment skills were, since everyone knows what you did for the Dragon Princess's bodyguard. Issei. I see, but I'm not interested in joining that guild. I know the things they do are dark assassination jobs that no normal guild would accept. Anyway, I'm not interested. I won't be part of any guild. What happens between the two of us isn't my business. I'm just a healer. Issei. I just hope your guild doesn't keep interfering in my affairs. The chestnut tree said it, disappearing in flames and reappearing at his house, where he was greeted by Liss. Liss. Hello teacher, how did it go? Issei. Well Liss, I just had an unexpected visit from someone from the Dark Guild, but I already took care of that. But I'll keep an eye on them in case they plot something against me. Liss. I should put a magic barrier around the master's house so enemies can't enter, like that Kitsune girl who tried to kidnap him. Issei. That's not a bad idea. Do it. I don't want someone to show up at my house when I'm in the kitchen and end up throwing a knife at them out of pure reflex. He said it thoughtfully, imagining the possibility. Meanwhile, elsewhere stood the leader of the Dark Guild, a werewolf with light blue hair and dark blue eyes. She wore black and red clothing and had her guild's emblem tattooed on her left arm. Behind her, her spirit animal watched everything with a serious expression. Rina. Tell me, Sekiko, I accept the healer joining our guild. I thought you were going to bring him along. She said seriously, looking at her subordinate. Sekiko. I couldn't, Rina-sama, that healer is more than he seems. I confirmed it myself. His abilities are superior to mine. He seems to have skills of the thief class, as well as magic and alchemy. Oh, he uses magic to make things disappear. The alchemy explains his healing abilities and his ability to create things. I have no doubt he's an apothecary. He also said that he wouldn't join our guild, but he wouldn't join the city's guild either. Rina. So she's not on either side and doesn't support either, she's just neutral between the two. Sekiko. I suppose so, Rina-sama. Rina. What an interesting situation. This young man is very interesting too. Let's see what else he's capable of doing in the city. Back with the chestnut-haired man, he was having tea when he received an unexpected visit from a woman who made him uneasy. She was quite affectionate with him, and it was also somewhat annoying that he had left the kingdom without even saying goodbye, although she understood that he had to find his own way and not be driven by the praise people gave him for his past actions. This woman was Endora, a woman with dark silver hair and bright emerald eyes, wearing tight black clothes, a breezy hat with a green rose, green gloves that reached almost to her elbows, and a necklace and earrings with green crystals. Just like the wise woman, the chestnut-haired man never liked to draw attention to himself or be recognized for his achievements, having an inferiority complex. She wondered where he got that attitude from. She knew his adoptive father, Roral, had never treated him as inferior, always praising his accomplishments and progress. This had to be something deeply rooted in his soul. He didn't understand his era. Because of the chestnut tree's past life, he had to live like this and be treated as someone inferior. He didn't want to be recognized by others, although he valued his humility, even though he hoped he would accept at least a little recognition. He no longer wanted anyone with ill intentions to take credit for his student. Anyone who dared to do that would be turned into a toad and used for his purposes. Both his skin and organs. In another dimension, the chestnut-haired man's former older brother felt a chill, sensing someone wanted to turn him into a laboratory frog and open his stomach. Back with the chestnut-haired boy, he was being hugged, cough cough, more like suffocated between his teacher's chest, and was turning blue, and a jealous and worried Liz was telling Endora to let go of the chestnut-haired boy before her immortality saved him from suffocation. The sorceress released her grip on him, and the chestnut-haired man fell unconscious. Endora. Oops, I think I went too far. She said it while nervously touching her cheek. Liz. What do you think? Raising an irritated eyebrow and looking with concern at his unconscious teacher. The chestnut-haired boy woke up a while later with an ice pack on his head, staring blankly at his teacher. Issei. Endora-sensei, if you wanted to punish me for leaving without saying goodbye, you could have done it differently. Not suffocated me until I almost died sense. Endora. Sorry Issei-kun, but I really missed you. Sorry if I went too far. Forget that you don't really like female affection. Issei. So she brought you here and how did she find me? Endora. This is where I come to sell alchemy services that people request. Besides, I recognized your magical power. Who else would have that colossal amount of magna? Even though you hide it well, your magical power is unmistakable to me. Remember, I am your teacher in magic and alchemy. Issei. You're right, I think you underestimated innately your master a bit. Liz. What is that? Endora. There are no masters who can create their own magical objects and sell them throughout the kingdom, holding a noble title like a condenser. They are the ones who can legally distribute their magical inventions throughout the kingdom, both through magical works and alchemy. These are great mages with vast magical reserves, and in each kingdom there are a number of them with the title Issei mentioned. Not many mages possess that much magic anymore, especially to infuse gems with magic and transform them into magical crystals, which are very valuable when sold. Issei. Magic crystals are magical gems that empower magical artifacts, granting them different types of magic. However, they must be refined properly, otherwise the crystal can explode and the magic can be released, creating a large explosion, depending on the power of the magic that was infused. Liz. That's amazing, teacher, and you can do it. Issei. Yes, but Dart takes less time than usual. To become a magic crystal, the mage would take an hour since he needs to be very focused, so his magic doesn't escape the crystal, much less explode and affect him. For me, it's easy because my reserves are very large. Endora. With the insane amount of money you have stashed away in your pocket dimension, I still wonder why you're working as a healer with a clinic when you could live comfortably for 5 lifetimes with the money you have stored from all the magic crystals I helped you sell. Liz. How many magic crystals did you usually sell? Issei. 60 magic crystals, which technically one magic crystal is equivalent to 100 gold coins, being something valuable to mages and being somewhat complicated to refine and make. Liz. So if I did them every so often I would earn, while thinking carefully, more than 6,000 gold coins. Endora. The funniest thing is that with the amount of money Issei has, he could buy more than 10 kingdoms for himself. Liz. That wouldn't make him the owner of almost half the planet. Issei. Technically, yes, but having so much free time would bore me to death if I weren't immortal. Only the masters know this important detail. I've never liked being lazy, especially when I have so much money. And owning land would be too much for me. I prefer smaller things. My father, Roral, taught me to always be humble. Besides, too much unnecessary attention would be dangerous, and I don't want to deal with other people's problems. They're not my concern unless it's necessary to intervene. Because if I did that, many envious people would try to defame me and turn many against me. Besides, if people found out who I really am, it would cause many heads to roll. It would create more chaos than good, and I prefer to avoid having potential enemies who might want to avenge the deaths of their relatives, knowing they brought it on themselves through their crimes, by trying to defame me out of envy. Endora. You always know how to avoid future problems, Issei-kun. you seem a little paranoid. He said this with a sigh, referring to how paranoid his student was, overprotecting himself from future problems by overthinking the possibilities before even acting. Although he couldn't blame him for always being more than 10 steps ahead of others, he did, preferring a humble life and avoiding titles and luxuries to prevent potential enemies or envious people from taking what he had worked so hard to earn. After their conversation and giving Yandere a room, he would be in the city for a few days on business. The chestnut-haired man was in his room thinking about the potential problems he would have with the guild and the Dark Guild. But there was nothing he hadn't overcome before, though he would be careful about the potential trouble this might cause. Chapter 12. Previously. Yandere. You always know how to avoid future problems, Issei-kun. You seem a little paranoid. He said this with a sigh, referring to how paranoid his student was, overprotecting himself from future problems by overthinking the possibilities before even acting. Although he couldn't blame him for always being more than 10 steps ahead of others, he did, preferring a humble life and avoiding titles and luxuries to prevent potential enemies or envious people from taking what he had worked so hard to earn. After their conversation and giving Yandere a room, he would be in the city for a few days on business. The chestnut-haired man was in his room thinking about the potential problems he would have with the guild and the Dark Guild. But there was nothing he hadn't overcome before, though he would be careful about the potential trouble this might cause. Back with our favorite chestnut-haired friend, he was having breakfast while Liz served him coffee. After breakfast, the chestnut-haired man went to the guild where the adventurers competition, which the Kitsune girl had told him about, was to be held. He wore a black hood with gold stripes to conceal his identity and avoid any problems should anything go wrong. The chestnut-haired man introduced himself as a healer to the other guild receptionists. They welcomed him warmly, as they had the other healers. He thought to himself that they were only third-level healers and not on his level. Issei's pav. Well, it might be true that their level is third level. That's because I've had many masters from each of the kingdoms since I was 4 years old. I'm used to other things, and these healers are at a normal level. No one else would have the potential I have. He sat in the designated area for healers, preparing himself for when it was necessary to heal someone. Issei pav. This is how I feel as an nurse. The battles of the competition between the adventurers began. Many battles were interesting, others regrettable, and still others crazy. You healed someone who had lost an arm in an accident, surprising everyone with your healing abilities. No one else could regenerate broken bones, tendons, skin, and veins. Everyone watched in amazement, but no one could see anything because of the hood that covered their body and face. After the fighting ended and he healed all the wounded, the guild members wanted to hire him as their healer. But the chestnut-haired man refused, explaining that he had his own clinic and had no need to work for the guild. The guild members accepted his offer. They couldn't force him to take the job anymore, as someone with his skills was hard to find. Meanwhile, in the mind of the chestnut tree. Issei's pav. The good thing is, I didn't accept. They could accidentally discover my identity as an adventurer. If I work there, I have to be careful not to run into anyone from the guild. I could get into unnecessary trouble, and I want a peaceful life as a healer. And what could happen is that my students might find me. And knowing how those girls are, they'd first hug and shake me, and then I'd get a scolding from them for leaving without saying goodbye. Afterwards, he went home with Liz. They had dinner because of the meal Liz had made. The brunette got ready for bed after such a long day, but he was happy that he'd had a normal day without too many problems. The best part was that he hadn't run into the purple-haired Kitsune girl or the ninja girl from last time who had tried to attack him. But I was grateful that nothing bad or strange happened. A quiet day is good from time to time, and not just dealing with dangers and problems and strange or mildly interesting people. He lay down to sleep in bed and fell asleep peacefully. In his mind, the chestnut-haired man slept peacefully in a white place, as if surrounded by clouds. But while he slept, beside him was a woman with long, almost lilac-violet hair that reached nearly her ankles, streaked with almost black-purple, with yellowish gold eyes and pointed ears. She had soft pink lips, a golden headdress that held her hair, black demon horns on her head, and delicate golden accessories like small chains in her hair and on her clothes. Her attire consisted of a black dress with a slit up her left leg that revealed her shoulders, part of her midriff, and cleavage. Her skin was soft and creamy white, and she had a voluptuous, striking figure. Her features were delicate and refined. This mysterious woman is Persephone, the dimensional goddess who brought the chestnut tree to that world. Persephone. Ara, you're so cute while you sleep, my dear. She gently stroked his head as she watched him sleep, caressing his cheek. Persephone. Don't worry, my dear Issei, I'll take care of the supernatural beings. It was fun watching them suffer, especially those treacherous women. They didn't value you. I saw how your life was, and I admit it angered me to see someone who made so many sacrifices for so many people suffer so much in just one lifetime. I've seen countless heroes die saving others for centuries, and you've died countless times protecting people who didn't deserve your sacrifices, much less have you in their lives. But to see someone, after suffering so much, continue to suffer because of those same people in anyone's eyes, it was idiotic that someone would defend such wretched beings. But when I saw you better, and I saw your true potential, which has not yet been unleashed and exploited. And those beings never saw your real potential. You have a great talent that is now unleashed, but not completely. Later, those beings will realize they lost you, and not as a mere toy, slave, or pawn, but as a very special man with good feelings and a kind heart. You've changed the lives of so many people around the world, and you have real people who care for you and protect you. You just have to see that and not distance yourself from them. And they won't do to you what those bastards did to you. Now you have a real family, and it's wonderful to see you happy now. Later on, your family will grow, and I'll be a part of that. Soon our first meeting will come. For now, I enjoy talking to you even though you can't hear me. Soon, someday, those supernatural beings will pay for what they did to you, my dear future follower. Besides, it will be their punishment for what they did to you and for revealing their powers by opening the portal of the abyss to my territory to make you suffer. Meddling with my territory is unforgivable. Besides, they've committed many crimes by meddling with life and death. Something that's my domain, something I don't like anyone interfering with. He said it with a sharp gaze, staring into nothingness with a barely contained rage. He no longer liked the idea of supernatural beings reviving the chestnut-haired boy. And turning him into a child, playing with his soul as if it were nothing, even though his soul had been badly damaged by those beings, and souls are like crystals. They can be damaged if someone manipulates them without knowing that souls are something no one should play with and manipulate at will, knowing the terrible consequences if the soul is destroyed. Everything that person had done would disappear as if it had never existed, and all the good that the chestnut-haired man did would disappear, and the people he saved from dying would die instantly as a consequence of the chestnut-haired man's soul disappearing. The woman looked away, her gaze shifting back to the brunette. She moved closer to him and stole a kiss. In his own subconscious, he gently awoke, opening his eyes to see a beautiful woman kissing him in his sleep. He woke with a start, blushing for the first time in years, his heart pounding. Issei Pav. What the hell was that? I don't understand who that woman was and why I feel like that kiss was real. He lightly touched his lips, feeling as if it were real, but he knew it was real. He wondered if he felt his heartbeat for that woman. He didn't want to think it was love at first sight. His heart still ached from what the Gremorys had done to him. But he felt this woman was special and different. He remembered how, before he woke up, she had said something to him. Flashback. Persephone. We'll see each other soon. I'll wait for you as long as it takes. You're someone special, Issei. Show who you are. You're not the same Issei you were in the past. Live your life the way you want. You don't have to wait for anyone to decide for you anymore. I've always watched your life, both in the past and now. Just keep living your life. I'm glad to have helped change your life and that you helped many others. You're a true hero who did so much for people who didn't deserve you because of all the bad things they did to you. It was unfair, but now you have a new opportunity and I hope you have the life you deserve. See you soon. End of flashback. The chestnut-haired man thought that this woman must be the one who brought him into this world. It didn't surprise him much, given his previous world. He admitted she was a very beautiful woman, something that made him blush slightly, but he was grateful for what she had done for him, giving him another chance at life and a more peaceful existence. He remembered his adoptive father, who was a great father figure, always supporting and comforting him, and giving him a family, something he had always longed for. Likewise, his teachers never underestimated him and always helped him to be better each day, shaping him into the person he is today. The chestnut tree remembered something his father had told him. Flashback. Oral. Issei, remember, regardless of whether we are united by blood or not, you will always be my son and my family. You gave this old man much happiness, giving him a purpose for this life. Never let others diminish your worth, no matter what the past has been like. Just focus on the present. And have the life you've always wanted. There are many people who truly love and appreciate you. You don't have to be alone. No matter what path you choose, you'll always have my support. No matter what happens, I'll always be here for you. This place is also your home. You'll always be welcome. The chestnut-haired boy, with tears in his eyes, hugged his father, grateful to have met him. Without him, he didn't know what would have become of him in this new world. It couldn't have been easy taking care of a stranger and bearing a responsibility that wasn't his, but Roral never saw him as a burden, but rather as family, and made him always feel at home and in a safe place. And that's why he promised to protect his father and become stronger to protect his family and loved ones who truly loved him. End of flashback. The chestnut-haired man smiled, remembering Roral's words, knowing that no matter where he was, he would always carry his loved ones in his heart. He saw a photo of himself when he became an adventurer. He had a grand dinner with his father and his teachers, celebrating his achievement and the great step he had taken in his new life. Fulfilling his dream as an adventurer. Everyone was smiling happily, it was a great moment for loved ones celebrating his achievement and all the effort he made to reach that level and fulfill his dream. The chestnut-haired man left the photo in its place and went back to sleep, feeling calmer than in his past life. Chapter 13. Getting to know the Issei Masters. Back with Issei, he was having a quiet day, except for dealing with the king of the kingdom called Lucius. 2 years had passed since the chestnut-haired man had lived in that kingdom, and now he was facing an important matter. It seemed his peaceful life as a healer was over. The king was investigating the presence of adventurers and other powerful individuals in the kingdom, and the chestnut-haired man was now in a meeting with other powerful figures from the northern and southern kingdoms, a meeting that had ties to his home kingdom. These people were their teachers. On one side was a man with white hair and pale blue eyes, wearing white clerical robes with gold details. He also wore black gloves, and his blessing was angelic purification, which allowed him to have angel wings and purify more than one kingdom within a 100-kilometer radius. His name was Sebastian. The other person was a woman with flaming red hair that seemed like fire. She wore a white mask with red markings and horns protruding from it. She wore white armor with silver accents and a white and red cape. She also wore black leather clothing and armor pieces at her waist. She carried a white and red katana with flames emanating from it. She was very hard-tempered and cold, like an immovable wall. This was Keed, the infernal swordswoman, blessed by the spirit of the phoenix. The woman who would not be intimidated by anyone, she hoped to have a fight with someone worthy of good values, someone not guided by worldly things. The other person was an elf with dark brown hair and green eyes, wearing green clothing with pieces of armor on her shoulders. She carried a bow in her hands and a bag of arrows on her back, also wearing armor on her arms. Her gaze was serious and sharp, as were her arrows. She was called Hana, the Archer of the Winds. Sonic arrows that created windstorms were gales capable of moving a mountain. His aim was perfect. He never missed where he aimed. His arrows pierced metal easily. Being a cell, he controlled the elements of earth and wind, giving him great mastery over them. He also used his elements in his attacks, making them powerful and dangerous. His wind was so strong he could create impenetrable wind barriers. Anyone who tried wouldn't come out alive to tell the tale without being cut like mincemeat or sent flying far away. The next person was a man in a black hood with a white mask covering his face. His clothes were black and white with grey accents, and his hair was white. This man was known as the Shadow Assassin, Jiren. His ninja skills, as well as his abilities as a thief and assassin, made him undetectable to any living being. It was impossible for a normal person to know if he was there or not. It was impossible to sense his presence. His thief skills allowed him to open any door or place with ease and infiltrate, without leaving a trace of his presence. His stealth is so good it would frighten anyone. You could have him right next to you without realizing it, which would be your end and you'd lose your head. His ability to disarm and find traps surpasses that of any magical genius. He can escape any trap or entrapment and live to tell the tale. His domain is shadows, darkness, wind, and light. With these elements at his disposal, this man is a danger if you're alone. The person appeared to be a wild man with long, dark brown hair streaked with red and sharp red eyes that matched his demeanor. He had sharp black claws for nails and wore beads as accessories in his long, waist-length hair. He wore a turquoise shirt and black pants, adorned with animal skins and black gloves with bandages and pieces of leather and animal fur on his wrists. This man, Koth, the wise beast. He was known for his hand-to-hand combat skills and his bestial attacks. His ability to adapt to any wild environment is superior. He knows more about animals and magical beasts than the back of his hand. If you wish to learn about any creature or magical beast, he will help you. If you want to have a fight, think twice before facing this man. The next person is an elf man with long silver hair and red eyes, fine features of royalty, but also the greatest master of magic, someone as ancient as history itself, who has created most of the magic spells known in that world. This master of mages, known throughout history before the present day, enjoys being surrounded by forests and nature, tranquil environments. He was writing in a book and at the same time, he was creating swirls of green energy around him. His gaze was gentle and serene. He was a peaceful and calm man in difficult situations, but ruthless if the situation demanded it. Before this man, any magician is a novice. He can't master a spell without even conjuring it. His motto is that the only limit a person has is their own desire to achieve what they want and don't limit your imagination. If you believe in something, make it possible. The next person was a man with long black hair and dark gray eyes like tar. His skin was white and he wore full black armor with white parts like a barn on his chest. This man was Takeshi, the black cabin boy of the void. The wise man with a mind as sharp as a blade to those he doesn't know. But he's mildly calm with those he does know. He dislikes injustice and even less fighting impure and dark-hearted people. He prefers to kill his enemies quickly rather than waste his time with beings who don't even deserve to be looked at. His talent with the sword surpasses that of any ordinary swordsman. And the barrier mage condenses his magic into stable or mobile barriers, but he can also create small barriers like tiny shields that are thin and delicate. These are double-edged swords, however, as he launches them at speeds exceeding that of lightning, slicing through his enemies like a freshly honed knife that could cut a horse with a mere touch. He can fly on his energy shields, which form an unbreakable defense. They cover his body with a thin layer of energy, a bodily barrier that protects him from any harm. Without needing to be alert, if attacked, his barriers will activate, protecting their user, who possesses the blessing of a black hole in the palm of his hand that absorbs any living being within its range of vision. This man is dangerous in every sense of defense and attack. If you are an enemy, run, flee, and pray that he doesn't find you. If you succeed, you will be safe. Otherwise, you will repay your sins in hell. The other was a blacksmith who, for his age, had a race between elf and dwarf, which is why he was a great craftsman. His body was made to be a blacksmith, very large and strong, with a long white beard and long white hair reaching his shoulders, and yellow eyes that shone like the fire of his forge. He was called Rias, the blacksmith of Devastation, known as the one who created the weapons of past heroes, known as the forger of legends. He has mastered every weapon he creates. No one else can call themselves a blacksmith without understanding the strength and beauty of each weapon he wields. Only someone like him sees the beauty and power of a weapon, not just at the workbench, but on the battlefield. A good weapon must be forged through hard work and courage. Weapons are part of their owners, they are parts of them like their souls or limbs. Know yourself first before you know your weapon, which is a reflection of its owner. A broken weapon is not trash, but a fighting being, by someone's side until the end. Their physical and magical strength is devastating. Never insult their work unless you wish to be turned into material for their weapons. Disparage their work and you won't live another day on Earth to tell the tale. The last one was Yandere, the witch and alchemist of calamity, sporting dark silver hair streaked with black and fiery green eyes that shone like emeralds. As beautiful and dangerous as a black rose in a field of flowers. It's best not to anger her, lest you end up as her next experimental subject. And being part of her new magical projects, a grand master of magic and alchemy, she loves cultivating herbs and healing flowers. Being an apothecary, she knows about poisons. If you don't want to be her next victim, it's best not to anger her. These were the masters who trained our favorite chestnut-haired boy. Each one trained him in different areas. Magic, alchemy, fighting, hand-to-hand combat, healing, animal handling, firebending, artifact creation, thievery, and even the art of being an invisible assassin. Along with his mastery of normal arts and his physical strength, these 9 people created the strongest man in each kingdom, possessing all the knowledge and skills necessary to awaken the potential that had always been hidden within him. But they didn't know that the chestnut-haired boy had even more potential than they had imagined, as you will see later. Chapter 14. Returning to the chestnut tree, he was in the hall being watched by his teachers and by King Lucius. Lucius. Don't be shy, White Cross healer, or should I say, grim adventurer. The chestnut-haired man frowned slightly, surprised to learn that the king had discovered his identity in this kingdom. He currently lived there, and his identity as both a healer and an adventurer was revealed. Being the king, he must have found information about the kingdom where he lived before, as King Winston had also arrived. There was a man with silver hair and blue eyes, being King Winston, the king of the kingdom to which the chestnut originally belonged. Issei was mentally grateful that the princess, Winston's daughter and the student of the chestnut-haired boy, hadn't come with him. It would be very difficult to explain why she disappeared for 2 years without saying a word or even saying goodbye. Issei. Your Majesties, if you two are here, it's not because I did something wrong or you need me for something, it's not like that. Lucius. You're very perceptive, Issei. We want to know why you didn't say you were entering through the 9 sovereigns. He said this referring to the masters of the chestnut tree. Those titles were given to them for their great promise and contributions to the world, both in the magical and historical realms, for their past achievements. And to be trained by one of them was a long time coming, since they had trained great heroes throughout the years, and they couldn't believe he was a disciple of those 9. Learning the knowledge of each of those 9 people would take years, even a lifetime, and each training session is worse than the last. And no one else can have the same magical or intellectual training to be on par with the other masters. If the chestnut-haired man was trained by those 9, it means he was a living miracle. He was superior to all the other adventurers, mages, alchemists, and fighters they had ever seen. Issei. Forgive me, King Winston, if I didn't tell you, I knew, with what you knew about me, that you might have asked me to personally train Clarice and teach her what I know, or that you might have given me a higher title if you knew who trained me. And I would have had more fame and popularity than necessary, and I would have been watched almost constantly since I was someone important and you wouldn't have let me leave the kingdom. Knowing that the white-haired princess wouldn't have let him go and would have followed him everywhere, she would have been worse than a shadow to him. And what's more, she would have been begging him to make her his personal disciple, to learn everything from him. It would have been a total nuisance. Winston. You're partly right, but we didn't summon you just for that. If the 9 sovereigns are here, it's because there's something serious going on. He said it seriously, with his hands clasped, thinking deeply. Lucius. King Winston is right, young Issei. It's for a serious reason. We're all here, even you and your teachers. They believe you're ready to be the 10th sovereign because of the things you've done in both kingdoms. The chestnut-haired boy was surprised to receive a new title, something that filled him with a depressive aura. It wasn't noticeable because of his hood. His plan to live a quiet life was going down the drain. His depressive aura was noticeable to his teachers, who smiled uncomfortably, knowing what their disciple was like. A normal person would have been delighted with such an offer and honor. Only the chestnut-haired boy was unique. He was depressed as if he had failed an exam and had to repeat the year. Sebastian and Jiren patted the brunette on the shoulder. Winston. But the most serious matter that brings us all together is because Lucius and I are the only human kings in this part of the continent. We decided to hold a meeting with the leaders of other kingdoms to discuss a matter of such importance. Hana. What your majesty is referring to is that the leaders of the other stripes are all in a delicate relationship with each other. And the fact that none of them get along, for there to be a summit of that kind, is something that involves everyone. The cell said it with a serious look, feeling a bad feeling. Takeshi. I'm sure if this involves everyone, something bad is happening. The Black Knight said it seriously. Several of the other sovereigns had their own theories or speculations about what might be happening. The chestnut tree did not know that it could be so important that all the leaders of the races had to meet. Lucius. It's because of the awakening of the Monster King and his troops of the Abyss. Everyone in the room opened their eyes in seriousness. It was technically impossible for that to happen. That place had already been sealed by the last heroes who died sealing it. Of the beings from the Abyss, it was the gods who sealed that place because of how dangerous it was and because they had been in a state of confinement for centuries. When that happened, the heroes had to give their lives to seal that place. Relying on a single god to maintain order was very forced. It was possible the gods were awakening. They didn't know the current situation. And this will also turn into total chaos if the portal to the Abyss opens, since the amount of corrupted magna would affect the dungeons, causing them to change into dungeons of abyssal creatures. Something is harmful to the world. If those beasts escape from those dungeons, they will invade the world. Something is bad. Pandora. This is more serious than expected. Winston. The plan is to form a temporary alliance with the other races to confront the Monster King of the Abyss. If we are all divided, the nearby kingdoms will soon disappear and the world will be lost. Zajith. But if there are gods, why doesn't the god in charge of that place take care of it? The beastly man said it seriously, clenching his fists because of the trouble that was coming for everyone. Lucius. This is beyond the power of the god in charge. He must be very weakened from covering the positions of the other gods, who are unavailable for this. Besides, this is happening through the Crimson Void. Winston. If you're wondering who they are, they're former followers of the Monster King who apparently survived the last war 300 years ago and want to break the seal and bring the Monster King back to this world. We can no longer rely on the goddess of the underworld and abyss because of the last war and the state of the gods. The connection in this world is severed. Only a dimensional rift could open magical communication between this world and the other. But it's risky to set foot in the underworld. It's dangerous for any living being, and summoning the goddess of the underworld, Lady Persephone, is a daunting task. It's a land where, by day, time flows like normal time here, but with unparalleled calm and beauty. But at night, time ceases to exist and seems infinite, a hell of death and destruction where death and danger are felt every second. Rose. Any recent discovery about an invasion that has occurred or is emerging from a new dungeon or an overflow of corrupted magical energy? The half-dwarf elf blacksmith said seriously. Winston. Unfortunately, a small village in the western part of the demon realm was destroyed by the opening of a dungeon. From it emerged a monster resembling a black mass with 4 giant yellow eyes and rows of sharp teeth. It burst from the earth, destroying the village. It took 20 S-class adventurers to finally seal the creature within the dungeon. The doors haven't been opened since that last time 4 months ago and are under constant guard. Which is for the best. There's no way any of that stuff can escape. It took a lot of wizards a while to seal the entrance to that dungeon. We've already sent several to investigate, and they say each floor is different. Everyone saw a magical hologram of what had happened projected onto the table. Everyone in the room was astonished to see that thing emerge from the ground, swallowing an entire house and leaving destruction in its wake. Orion. What did you mean by the floors being different? Lucius. Every time someone goes in there to investigate, they say the floors are out of order, that they never appear in the same place. And that each monster is more different and dangerous than the last, which is a problem. We only have to enter the dungeon and leave quickly to prevent the monsters from escaping. But we always give the people we send an exit scroll. He creates a magic circle that teleports a person from one place to another, the place being outside the dungeon at the entrance, which is guarded by guards and high-ranking adventurers. Everyone agreed that it was very dangerous to leave the dungeon door open if people entered to investigate. But at least the people weren't in danger since they had the escape scroll to leave that horrible place. Issei. All that remains is to investigate and find out the day the seal of the abyss will break. We need to be ready when the Monster King attacks and prepared for anything and everything in this war. I just hope the other leaders accept the alliance. Otherwise, little by little, each kingdom will fall to the Monster King and his troops, which could be the end of the world as we know it. Everyone nodded in confirmation. It was best to prepare for whatever might happen. Meanwhile, in the abyss, troops of soldiers marched towards some location in the chaotic apocalyptic landscape. The leaders looked imposing, with a brilliant crimson light emanating from them, and crowns of dark crimson energy floated above their heads. Preparing for the chaos that will be unleashed on the human world when the time is right. Chapter 15. Meanwhile, our favorite chestnut-haired boy was having mysterious problems. He was having trouble in the Abyss dungeon, which, for some strange reason, wasn't a normal dungeon. It was something out of the ordinary. But to understand exactly what trouble the chestnut-haired boy got into, let's go back a few days. A meeting of the high commands of each kingdom, the leaders of their respective races, could be seen. There was King Lucius, King Wystan, the Fairy King, the Giant King, the Demon King, the King of Beasts and Demi-Humans, the Dwarf King, the Elf King, and the Dragon King. A man with dull dark green hair and bright yellow eyes could be seen, his ears pointed, with red markings on the right side of his face below his eye and black markings running down his neck and chest. He wore fine white clothes with gold details and a cape over his shoulders. His gaze was neutral and icy like ice. This man was the king of the elves. The next man was somewhat old but strong and short in stature, with a long beard and white hair due to his advanced age. His eyes were brown, and he wore armor, a battle axe in his hand, and a black cloak made of animal fur. This wise, serious-looking man was the king of the dwarves. The next one was a man with long, somewhat unruly brown hair, a sideburn that was a bit long but not too long. His gaze was cold, that of a warrior ready for battle. He had bright orange eyes, like his courage, and claw marks around his right eye. He wore armor on his shoulders, arms, waist, and legs, with long chains on his wrists and waist. His armor also featured the face of a one-horned goat monster on his right shoulder and the head of a bull monster at his waist. He wore a red cape around his waist and carried a large sword on his left shoulder. The sword was so large and heavy that only someone with great strength could lift it, someone with the physique of a warrior who could easily lift something like that with one hand. This man is the king of the giants, judging by the immense size of his shoulder. The next figure was a man with hair as white as moonlight and crystalline blue eyes with delicate features. He wore beautiful, shimmering wings that shimmered in shades of white, light blue, and dark blue, interspersed with gold, purple, and violet. He wore full armor in these colors, with long, bluish-white robes adorned with gold flowing from the lower part of the armor. In his hands, he carried two gleaming swords, one shining pure white and the other a blazing blue. This man is the Fairy King. The next one was a tall, almost white, silver-haired man with gray eyes, black markings on both sides of his cheeks, and large black horns protruding from the top of his head. He had pointed ears, and his skin was a pale white with scaly markings extending from his neck and shoulders. He had a well-built physique, and his clothes were black and gray. His gaze was calm and tranquil. This man is the king of the dragons. The next man had silver hair, orange eyes, brown skin, and fine, sharp black claws. His ears were slightly pointed at the tips, and he had horns like a goat's. He wore a black trench coat with pretty gold and white trim on the cuffs, black pants, and black boots. His gaze was calm, but his dark aura was terrifying. Even though he appeared calm, when he touched a rock, it crumbled into useless black pieces, turning to ash. This man is the king of demons. The last one was a chestnut brown with feline ears and reddish-orange eyes, medium light dark skin with a soft tone. He wore white clothes with black, red, yellow, orange, and turquoise, and a turquoise scarf. This young man is the king of beasts and semi-humans. Even the 9 sovereigns, including our protagonist as the 10th, were in the room. It was a very serious moment. Judging by the looks of seriousness, hatred, indifference, disgust, and annoyance that each leader cast upon the others. Issei's pav. Without a doubt, King Winston and Lucius weren't lying when they said that all the leaders of each race didn't get along, and their situation was delicate. Feeling the room fill with the aura of each leader, making the poor guards tremble with fear at being in a room with 19 of the most powerful people in all the kingdoms. Sebastian, being the calmest in the room, along with Orion the wise elf, were trying to calm the leaders. This was not the time to deal with rivalries and differences. Each leader understood this and calmed down. If they were all gathered in this room, it was for a reason. Zorian. So this young man is the 10th sovereign? I ask with curiosity the king of beasts and demi-humans. Issei. That's right, your majesties, it's a pleasure to meet each and every one of you. Ulrich. The pleasure is ours, lad. I'm grateful for what you did for my daughters. The Dragon King smiled, saying that the chestnut-haired man had helped save one of his own from a dangerous monster years ago and had also helped his youngest daughter break a curse. Now his daughter could live a normal life without being locked away and judged by others for her condition. Issei, you're welcome, your majesty. I only did what was right. As a healer, it's my duty to help those in need. Rowan. Putting that aside, we need to continue with the meeting so we can all be gathered here. The king of the elves said seriously. Lysander. It's something that happened in a village in my demonic domain. Something I reported to the human leaders. There have been minor anomalies in human lands as well. The Demon King said seriously. Winston and Lucius nodded. It was true, it was serious, it couldn't be easily ignored, it wasn't normal for something like this to happen anymore. Bryce. What do they mean by that? What's really going on? The Dwarf King said gravely, sharpening his blade. He knew demons and humans didn't get along. But for Lysander, Poliron, and Lucius to share information, it must be something very serious. It didn't just affect one kingdom. Lucius explained the situation to everyone, just as he had explained to Issei and the 9 sovereigns, detailing what had been happening and the suspicions that the Abyss Seal was breaking and the Monster King was being released. Something shocked all the other leaders. They couldn't believe something so serious was happening. Evander. This is inconceivable. The seal can't be breaking. That madman mustn't get out. The king of the giants slammed his fist on the table, making the place tremble with a feeling of helplessness and worry for his people. The other leaders felt the same, clenching their fists. Lucian. This is more serious than I thought. The fairy king clenched his fists. Issei. We all need to calm down, we mustn't lose hope. We all need to calm down. Getting worked up won't solve anything. Hana. Issei is right, we all need to calm down. The archer said seriously. Bryce. You're right, we can't ignore this problem we have on our shoulders, we can't deal with this separately. Lucian. As Winston and Lucia said, if everyone fights separately, the war will progress further because we'll be divided. This would allow the Monster King's troops to gain more ground against us. This would cause the fall of each kingdom individually and we would lose many of our warriors and civilians. Evander. Knowing all this, my mind changed. We are solely responsible for the hatred in this world. As leaders of each kingdom, we must take charge of this. Together, we must defeat the Monster King and bring about radical change. Rowan. I'm with you. We'll have to unite, even if we don't want to. If our differences prevent us from working together, we'll all die at the hands of the Monster King. All the other kings hesitated to accept the enmity between each race. It was palpable, something that had lasted for centuries. Now they had to unite to defeat a common enemy. Some, out of pride, refused to accept. Others were hesitant because they didn't trust each other and didn't want to be betrayed by those who, without trust, were supposedly allies. But the chestnut-haired man abruptly stood up from his seat, hitting the table, and said seriously, drawing the attention of everyone in the room, who were surprised by the chestnut-haired man's outburst. Issei. Put your pathetic pride aside. This is not the time to hesitate or dwell on the bad things of the past. But let's move forward and work together to save this world from calamity. You may not trust yourselves because of past wars and years of enmity, but now is not the time to remain enemies. Be allies. Innocent lives are at stake. May innocent people die at the hands of these monsters. Only you could not put aside your stupid pride and work together. We must defeat the Monster King and bring change to this world. As leaders, we must bear the weight of both good and evil. We must make peace and work together, supporting one another, if we want to win this war and bring peace to the world. They wished to see all the work and effort of their ancestors destroyed, simply because they, with their doubts and pride, could not put them aside and truly help one another. They wished that men, women, children, the elderly, and so on, would die and suffer because of the chaos and death of this war. I don't help people for recognition and titles, I do it because it's the right thing. If I were you, I would do my part because I don't want to see this world full of blood and corpses tomorrow and look in the mirror and see all those lives I could have saved by not helping. And to see those people die, children lose their parents and become orphans. To see parents lose their children, lacking the strength to save them. If no one does anything, who will? Who will allow such a scenario to be created by their own selfish decisions? I'm not a king or leader. I don't carry the responsibility you carry. But I know that in a situation like this, knowing I wouldn't have what it takes to protect everyone from such a threat, I would seek out people to help me. We are not alone in this world. If you give yourselves a chance, you'll see what you can all do together. We all have more in common than you all know. We are all living beings. We all deserve to live, and no one should take away our freedom or steal what we have. If you won't do anything, I will. I will not allow the people who were family to me to suffer because of your pride. I will protect the people who truly matter to me and who gave me another chance to live a happy and peaceful life, and I will not allow anyone to take away the people I love most in my family. He said it with his hand on his heart, his words filled with fervor and determination. His voice resonated with strength and conviction, echoing throughout the place and in the minds of the leaders who saw the chestnut-haired man. No one had ever spoken to them like that before. Anyone would have thought it disrespectful. The king smiled at the chestnut-haired man's words. He was the one who hadn't been afraid of them and had spoken with truth, strength, and courage. Not displaying arrogance, but true pride, he didn't hesitate to give his all to defend his own values and convictions. His desire to protect them all was genuinely important to him. He made them see that they weren't fighting for themselves, but for their kingdoms, their people, their families, and their friends. They had to be united, not divided. If this young man had the courage to challenge them, they should believe in him and in themselves and help each other in this war as allies. They had to fight for a common goal, not only against the monster king and the abyss, but to bring peace to this world. They had to abandon senseless wars forever, unite as one, and fight for what truly matters, not letting everything be destroyed by their own weaknesses and limitations. Hatred and rivalry serve no purpose now. What matters is the true value of bringing change to this world. The 9 masters of the chestnut tree were proud of him. They knew what he said was true, regardless of whether the other king supported the alliance or not. They would help their disciple in this world. As 9 sovereigns, each one promised to protect the world from the evil that sought to invade it, to protect those who could not protect themselves, and to change this world for the better. If this world were to fall, they would not stand idly by. Their students needed them, just as this world needed them. If they were to die in this war, they wouldn't die as cowards. If they died, they would do so standing, fighting for what was right and defending the lives and dreams of those who believed in them. If they didn't, who else would? They died as legends, knowing they didn't do it for fame or recognition, but to bring peace to this world. It was a sacrifice the 9 of them were willing to make. This world gave them great things. The opportunity to live and grow, to learn, to dream, to suffer, to cry, to win, to love, to want. And the opportunity to get to know each other and have great friends and allies and a great, special family among them, regardless of race or differences. They trained great disciples and legends, and their greatest pride was meeting Issei, someone with a big heart and a past they didn't know much about, but they would wait until the day he shared something like that with them. They saw him grow and mature, they saw him strive day and night. They saw him break his limits more than once, they saw how little by little he recovered his emotions and considered them family. They gave him support and affection. He always needed to feel appreciated and valued, regardless of his talent. He showed everything he could do, no matter how many times he fell. He had the determination to get up and keep going, no matter how difficult the situation. They are proud of him and his progress. If life decided that this was the last test for everyone, and if they could work together to bring the peace they dreamed of, they will not give up without giving their all, just as their student has just shown everyone in that room. No matter who was against the chestnut-haired man, they would follow him to the ends of the earth. After all, they were his teachers and he was their student. If he died, they would die with him, fulfilling his greatest wish. To fight alongside his student, to fight for what was truly right. The 9 sovereigns Pav. We know you've done great things, Issei, and we know you'll do many more. This isn't the end of your adventure, but the beginning of something greater. You yourself must discover this, and we'll be with you every step of the way. No matter what happens, you can count on us. After the situation calmed down, the kings laughed at the chestnut-haired man's bravery and courage in speaking with them and making them see the truth. All the leaders signed the alliance, joining hands and forming a magic circle from which emerged the mark of a winged sword and a scale, signifying equality between each race and kingdom. Being a brand of equality, everyone would support each other and see each other not as different, but as equals. And as comrades in war and battle, a brotherhood and union that should not be broken by anyone. If one was in trouble, everyone would go to help each other. The kings would communicate these instructions to their soldiers to keep them informed of the situation, and everyone would contribute to strengthening themselves, sharing information with one another, and ensuring everyone was equally prepared for whatever might happen and whatever this war might bring. They knew one thing for all. They would not stand idly by until the very end. They would no longer fight separately, but all together to protect this world from the evil that came to destroy everything they knew. They would be ready when the day of war began. This world is not alone, and they would take care of protecting it with everything at their disposal. The chestnut-haired boy was happy to see this. He, too, would prepare more than ever for this new test that life would give him. It would measure his courage, determination, strength, and mental fortitude to overcome whatever came his way. He wasn't alone. He had friends, classmates, and teachers who would be by his side, fighting alongside him. People didn't abandon him when they had the chance. They saw his true self and talent. Others were the shadows of his mind and past, shadows that haunted him and marked his life for the worse. But now he had people who would be with him in this new test. He should overcome it and demonstrate everything he is capable of doing with true people by his side. Chapter 16. After the meeting of the leaders of each kingdom, they managed to forge the alliance without too many setbacks. The chestnut-haired man prepared to go to the abyssal dungeon that connected to the abyss dimension, a place that connected to each world, causing dimensional rifts every so often. This was very unpredictable, bringing monsters from other worlds, which is why this dungeon was dangerous. Aside from connecting to the underworld, as Winston and Lucius explained, that place was divided into very important floors, which were gigantic and almost infinite. Their order changed periodically, so it was difficult to know if you were on floor 1 or floor 30, or vice versa, due to the complexity of the place. Only high-level adventurers could enter that place and barely escape alive due to its extreme danger. They carried several items for safety, storing them in a magic bag to avoid carrying too much weight. Even if they could create a pocket dimension to store their belongings, it wasn't feasible in that world. To do something like that would require someone to control the elements of emptiness and light or possess great mastery of magic, something few had. Therefore, it was better to use a magic bag without so many complications and limitations. Carrying food, healing items, and necessary equipment for their dungeon expedition. Alan, the dungeon's caretaker, being a former high-class adventurer, was in charge of its upkeep. He gave Issei several exit scrolls, as the dungeon's perimeter was already marked with a magic circle, indicating where they could appear should any of the floor monsters become too difficult. They were doing this because that dungeon was the entrance to the abyss, and even more so because it was where the Monster King was. It was Issei's duty, and some of his acquaintances would search the dungeon to find the site of the ritual on the floor that would open the portal to the abyss, the place where the seal would break, releasing the Monster King. The floor containing the altar bearing the seal that encased the abyss would provide the Monster King with a quick escape route from the dungeon. This had to be prevented at all costs, because the moment it happened, war would begin. The chestnut-haired man was with his 3 magical beasts. His phoenix Daha, his salamander Callum, and his black dragon Krill. It was a small black dragon with blue eyes, about the size of a cat. It was serious and somewhat annoyed because Cross, the infernal archer, was eating Krill's cookies. The little one was biting the archer's head, and the little dragon was taken away by the chestnut-haired man, who stroked its ears to calm it down. Issei. Seriously, Cross, can't you calm down instead of gluttonously eating baby dragon food? He said it with a sigh about the situation. Still seeing orange-haired, orange-eyed man wearing red and black clothing, carrying his bag of arrows on his back. Cross. Come on, Nyson, don't be angry. I was just a little hungry. It's not my fault your dragon's food is so delicious, knowing he eats the same things we do. The orange-haired boy said this because 8 years ago, on a mission before he became a healer, he had rescued some children from slave traders, including a 10-year-old boy named Cross. Issei had adopted him as his younger brother. Seeing the boy's eyes reminded him of himself. He had long wished the boy could have what he had in this life. A place to call home and family. Cross was very attached to Issei, managing to fit into his new family as the child Issei trained. Although Issei explained to the boy that he couldn't be like him, that it was already a difficult path and it was better for him to have a quiet life, the boy explained to Issei that he wanted to be strong to help those who couldn't be saved. Just like Issei, the boy could see in his eyes that the brown-haired man had lived through worse things. The chestnut-haired man looked into the boy's eyes, seeing the courage in his words and his determination. He agreed to train the boy, and the training began slowly but surely until the boy became a great adventurer. The orange-haired boy was now the chestnut-haired man's companion on this expedition. Issei. Stay alert at all times, Cross. This is serious. We don't know what we're facing, something unknown that even we ourselves don't understand. The orange-haired boy nodded at what his older brother said. Although the two weren't alone, there were others as well. The next one was a goblin girl with greenish-black hair. She had phosphorescent green streaks, black leather outfits, and winter white fur. Her phosphorescent green eyes matched her hair, and she had sharp black claws. This girl was skilled in both melee and ranged combat. Her name was Grumph. Grumph. Issei-sensei is right, we need to focus on the mission. We don't know what we'll find when we enter the dungeon. What do you think, Cecilia? She said this while looking at a silver-haired elf with bright white hair and light green eyes, wearing a white and green robe, and carrying a bow made from the sacred tree of the Elven Kingdom. With her belt of arrows at her waist, she was cautiously drawing back the bow. This place gave her a bad feeling. Cecilia. I agree with Sensei. This place gives me a bad feeling, even though it's the first level of the Abyssal Dungeon. It's still an unknown and dangerous place. We don't know what might happen, much less what kind of monsters we'll face. I feel like my senses are telling me I shouldn't let my guard down for a second. The girl with long black hair and almost silver-violet eyes, wearing white armor with gold and black accents, wore a black skirt with gold trim and black stockings as part of her normal attire. She also carried a large black sword with a gold hilt and wore a white cape with gold detailing on the back. The girl's gaze was sharp, reflecting the situation. Her name was Yui. Yui. This place makes me very uneasy. As a paladin, this place heightens my senses. I feel like every part of my body is screaming for danger without me even realizing it. Issei. It's good that everyone is on alert, and you, Cassiel, how's everything up there? He told this to his other adopted younger brother, who was 3 years younger than Issei when he arrived in this world. The brunette watched a blonde descend from the sky, leaning against a column, his cleric robes and large white angel wings visible. He possessed an angel's blessing, though not like Sebastian's. But even though they weren't the same blessings, the blonde's was not something to be taken lightly. Cassiel. For now, everything is calm, too calm to be normal. But upon entering this dungeon, I didn't understand something. Cross. And what would that be, brother? Cassiel. Don't you remember, Cross? When we entered the cave, at the far end was the entrance to this dungeon. But the sky was green like poison, and there were many tall buildings like a ghost town. And in the center was the giant tower that seems to go on forever, and each floor has a giant green eye staring at us, as well as vines covering it instead. He said it seriously, recalling how they entered the dungeon and found themselves facing the true dungeon, a gigantic, seemingly endless tower filled with things they had never seen before. Cross. If I remember correctly, I was too composed, so my mind wasn't alert. Issei. Well, be 100% alert, Cross. This place isn't child's play. This place connects several different infernal worlds that are linked to the abyss itself. And we don't know what we might find on this floor, so we have to be alert at all times. This place may seem peaceful for now, even though it's a giant cave inside a tower, even if it's just the first floor. From what I can see, each floor is the entrance to a different world. If this is a cave, then the tower itself doesn't have a fixed size. Therefore, the creatures must be very large to match the size of the place they come from. Everyone, be alert and walk carefully. As they all walked carefully, trying not to fall into the void, they were traversing a vast ravine surrounded by mountains inside the strange giant cave. If they made too much noise, those stalactites would share them on meat skewers, and none of them wanted that. Most treaded carefully to avoid falling. Others were sweating profusely, as there were floating rocks to walk on, making it easier to climb out of the endless ravine. But none wanted to risk taking the easy way out, since those rock platforms weren't solid. One wrong move could have a tragic end. Or, in the worst case scenario, they might fall and be swallowed by some beast in the depths of the ravine. Then everyone felt a storm coming when they saw some lightning. Something strange about it was seeing lightning in a cave during a storm. But a lightning bolt came in their direction, which made them run and quicken their pace to be in a wider area. Cassiel had to dodge a lightning bolt that almost hit him, something that everyone saw, putting them on alert. It was too improbable that it would fall vertically and not horizontally. It was as if someone had thrown it on purpose. Cross. Cassiel, are you okay? Cassiel. Yes, I'm fine, but where did that lightning come from? Cecilia, look at that thing over there. Everyone turned to look toward some rocks, seeing a kind of monster with feline ears and a bear's body. Its face wasn't normal. You could see its skull and some of its bones, like its spine, which looked as hard as rock. It had a pair of antlers on its head, several blue rays emanating from the monster's body, and sharp claws. Cross. What the hell is that thing? Yui. She almost looks like a necromancer because of her face, but at the same time she doesn't. She already has the body of a monster. Issei. I don't know what that thing is, but we can't let it kill us. We have to finish it off before it gets to us. Don't be fooled by its appearance. It might not be what it seems. Brum. Everyone watch your backs. They all stepped aside, dodging the charge of a boar that was twice the size of a normal bear, but the strange thing was that it had diamond crystals all over its body, even its teeth were made of diamonds. The animal's eyes shone supernaturally in a bright blue flash. Issei. I don't like this at all. Everyone split up. Cassiel, come with me, we have to finish off the lightning monster, the rest of you take care of the monster spore. The others nodded, taking their positions as Issei's team advanced swiftly against the lightning monster. Cassiel, using holy magic, created energy barriers around her companions to shield them from the lightning. The monster no longer allowed them to approach without being struck by the lightning. Now that they were protected, they had a better chance of landing a direct hit. Encasing his fists in green magnesium, lunged at the monster, delivering a powerful blow that struck the wall and some stalactites in his path. Cassiel, along with him, created several energy barriers that resembled shields. They were thin, like sharp eyelets, which impaled the monster's limbs before it could charge at Grum. Taking advantage of this, Issei surrounded his daggers with red and blue magna, transforming them into two noble swords that sliced through the monster's skin, cutting it in half. He finished off his formidable enemy, whose impact was like moving a heavy mountain with his bare hands. At the same time, Cross, Cecilia and Yui were fighting the boar. They had to get out of the way because the boar's movements were very fast and its hide was very hard to cut because of the diamonds embedded in it. Its tusks were a problem if Cross managed to get close enough to wear them. He had to watch the boar's hooves because, although the boar was heavy, its strength was immense. It was like being hit by a truck at full speed without brakes. The only places the boar wasn't protected were its legs, its stomach and its head. Cross and Cecilia, with their arrows in the wind and fire element, managed to blind the boar's sight, giving Yui the opportunity to envelop it with her body, causing the boar to fall face down so she could aim at its stomach and kill it once and for all. Everyone was relieved to have finally defeated those monsters. They decided to rest a bit before moving on to the next floor and gathering information. The floor they were on was like a cave within a floor, but the place seemed endless, without walls, as if they were outdoors. But there were floating rocks like platforms that drifted around the place, and large canyons and deep ravines, and stalactites both on the floor and the ceiling, besides the strange monsters they defeated. Issei drew the monsters in a notebook, noting their characteristics and the abilities they displayed in each battle. Besides his daggers, he cut off the monster's claws, horns, and hooves. He also checked them for any magna stones inside. He found 2 different stones, but they were corrupted and had to be carefully refined, as they could turn a normal person into a monster if they fell into the wrong hands, depending on the person's dark desires and the stone's corrupted nature. The chestnut-haired man levitated them with his magic and put them in his magic bag. As the others went, a door of light appeared frantically, their exit from that floor. At first, they hesitated to enter because they didn't know where they would appear, but they knew it wasn't the time to back down, so they advanced, entering the door of light. Appearing in a place they hadn't expected, it honestly seemed like a beautiful place with vegetation and tranquility. Something shouldn't be amiss. There shouldn't be a chaotic place, much less one with its own sun. The place, based on their theory that the dungeon connected to other worlds, was treacherous. But at the same time, it was something very dangerous. What is this place? Cecilia. This is too quiet to be good. Cross. For a tower called the Abyssal Tower, I didn't expect it to have such a peaceful place inside. Cassiel. Even so, we can't let our guard down, we're still in danger. Yui. I agree with Cassiel, this place gives me a bad feeling. It's too good to be true. With what happened on the first floor, we don't know if this floor is as dangerous as the last one. Issei. Let's keep moving forward. Don't stray too far. If we stay here doing nothing, we won't find our way out of this floor. Keep your eyes peeled for anything suspicious in this place. They all nodded, walking together and exploring the place. Even though it seemed peaceful, it could be more dangerous than the next floor, something that put them all on alert, wondering who the monster on this floor would be, the one they had to defeat to advance to the next level of this dungeon. Chapter 17. Returning to the chestnut tree and its companions, they walked through the large forest, arriving at a vast meadow full of flowers and vegetation. Something about it seemed strange to the others. It was too quiet to be normal. Upon reaching a section of the meadow, it was a kind of extensive jungle, a strange and dangerous place for everyone. But they saw in the distance a mountain that seemed to have a structure on its summit, resembling a kind of tower. It must be someone's house. But who would live in such a strange place? The path to the small tower seemed straight, with stone steps leading up to the summit. Yui. Why is there a tower inside a jungle, inside a monstrous tower like this? Cross. I don't know, but it's a strange place, it's a strange place. Who lives in this place? Cecilia. I suppose you must be a strong person to live in a place like that. Cassiel. It's very possible, Cecilia, that nothing in this place is what it seems anymore. Issei. We must investigate. Someone must have information about this place. And if it's an enemy, everyone should be on high alert and not let their guard down, but don't let that person see our intentions. Act cautiously so as not to attract the attention of whoever lives on that mountain. They all nodded and walked to the place, careful not to step on any traps the mountain person had set for intruders. Upon arriving, they knocked on the door, which was opened by a hooded woman. Hooded. A pleasure for travelers who have brought you to my humble abode. Issei, it's a pleasure, ma'am. We have a few questions for you. He said seriously, but gently so as not to frighten the woman. I already feel that woman isn't normal. Especially not to live in such a dangerous place. Hooded figure. Of course you can ask me whatever you want, but come on in, it doesn't bother me. The six of them entered cautiously, checking the place. It looked very normal, but something was unsettling for the type of place the hooded woman lived in. They questioned the woman about why she lived there and how she came to live there, given that it was a dangerous place, and whether she was from another world, connected to the abyssal tower of monsters. The woman dodged their questions with vague and non-existent answers. She only told them that she was a mage and didn't like to reveal her identity, and that she had lived there for years. These questions left the whole group with more doubts than answers, but they didn't ask any more. They didn't want to be intrusive, and even less did they want the hooded figure to see them as enemies if they were being extravagant, since she lived on one of the tower's levels. Once everyone had gone to sleep, they slept in groups so they wouldn't be alone, giving the hooded woman an excuse. They liked sleeping together and didn't want to disturb her or take advantage of her hospitality. This was to avoid sleeping in separate rooms and also to prevent it from being a trap and the woman from taking advantage of their low guard. Taking turns looking after each other, the girls slept in one room and the boys in another. They took turns standing guard to prevent the hooded woman from plotting against them and to immobilize her if she entered the room and did anything bad to them. Issei decided to investigate and leave the room, while Cross and Cassiel kept watch in case anything went wrong. The brown-haired man's beast retreated into his shadow to avoid attracting attention and would go to him if the hooded woman did anything against him. The chestnut-haired man explored the house, pretending to be lost and just looking for water. He even opened a door, only to have it slam shut behind him. Just as he was about to teleport away, the hooded figure's voice rang out. Hooded figure? You're leaving so soon? The chestnut-haired man, before letting go of her, saw the place suddenly change, becoming larger as if he were in another mysterious place. It was a kind of ancient temple where everything was dark. Issei. Who are you really and where am I? The chestnut-haired man said seriously, looking at the hooded woman. Her hood vanished, as did her humble clothes, revealing a beautiful woman with almost violet purple hair and bright yellow eyes, with a demon's horn on her head, wearing fine black clothes with gold accents. Persephone. I am Persephone, the goddess of the underworld of this world. Welcome to the underworld, Issei-kun. The woman smiled, her expression serious as she looked at the brunette. Issei knew it was death, but not on the level of Persephone, even though she was a goddess and weakened, being the only one keeping everything in order, while the other gods were incapacitated. He knew he shouldn't underestimate this woman. The chestnut tree where the entire peaceful and beautiful place was located was not normal. It looked like that during the day, but at night it was something else entirely, somewhere in the underworld. The area it was in resembled a vast, massive, and dangerous jungle, judging by the noises that could be heard from afar. The woman approached the chestnut tree in a menacing manner, surrounded by a red and purple aura. The chestnut tree knew he couldn't confront her. Moreover, it was clearly forbidden for any being to set foot in the underworld without Persephone's permission. Unfortunately for the chestnut tree and its group, they had fallen there due to the mysterious, ever-changing order of the dungeon's abyssal tower. The chestnut-haired man knew that if he fought with a woman, he could not guarantee the safety of the others, and that breathing in the underworld was impossible and dangerous for mortals, as they could die from the toxic air and the corrupt and negative energy of the place, the miasma being corrosive and poisonous to any human. Cassiel knew very well that he couldn't purify the entire place. It was too vast, and everyone would be in danger because they didn't know the kind of creatures Persephone had at her disposal. If it weren't for his immortality, he wouldn't be alive now, feeling the toxic heavy air that a normal person couldn't withstand without dying or being contaminated and turning into a corrupted monster. He couldn't allow anything to happen to his companions. If he did something reckless, the lives of his siblings and students would be in his hands. He had only a few choices. Sacrifice himself for them and convince Persephone to spare his companions' lives and help them in the situation against the Monster King in exchange for his own life, or escape and let his companions die, or risk everything to escape together and try to get out alive, knowing the dangers of being in Persephone's domain. Many options were working against them all, with no chance of survival for any of them. And it never even crossed the mind of the chestnut-haired man to abandon his team, regardless of its survival. A typical hero might sacrifice their friends to survive and save the world. Another person would sacrifice themselves for what's right, to save everyone, regardless of the consequences for themselves. He knew that if he didn't make a decision, many would pay for it, whether right or wrong. He chose to sacrifice himself for his loved ones and persuaded Persephone to help them and his companions in exchange for his life. Knowing that even though it wasn't their intention to reach Persephone's domain, it was still a rule that shouldn't be broken no matter what. That kept everyone safe and separate from the normal world, the world of the dead, the void, and corrupted beings. Although Persephone is the woman who saved his life long ago by bringing him into the world he knows, she knows that as a goddess, she must abide by the rules of her domain without her consent. And that he had no right to demand anything from her for what she did for him in the past, much less order them all to go so easily, ignoring the rules that must be followed in that place. Persephone. You know who I am, don't you, Issei? Issei. Lady Persephone, I regret that my companions and I have invaded your domain without your consent. Persephone. You know, even if it wasn't their intention to enter my domain, it's still an important rule. Humans cannot be in the underworld. He said it with a serious look. He explained the situation outside the tower and the dungeon, and with the awakening of the Monster King, Persephone became more serious. She couldn't do much for now, as she wasn't in a condition to confront the Monster King, much less mark him again or annihilate him. She needed the marks of the other gods and their energies for that, and they weren't available for that now, especially given the current situation. What the woman didn't expect was to see the chestnut-haired man kneel before her and, lowering his head, utter a few key words. It was as if they were taboo for Persephone to prevent her from retaliating against him and his companions. Issei. In the name of darkness and the abyss, I surrender my body, soul, and will to you, goddess of the underworld. I beg you to hear me. I offer you what has already been mentioned in exchange for letting my companions go, and until tomorrow, when my life ends, it will be yours for eternity. The woman grew serious upon hearing the chestnut-haired man's words, summoning her spear and slowly approaching him. Anyone would have thought she was going to kill him, and the chestnut-haired man, awaiting his end, knowing he wouldn't escape whatever was to come, would accept it, knowing he had done the right thing to protect his loved ones. He waited for the woman's attack, but it never came. Something puzzled him. Having his eyes felt as the woman was close to him, taking his chin and bringing him closer to her, and speaking into his ear. Persephone. I see you've changed a lot, Issei-kun. You passed my test, though I didn't like that you used that taboo against me. I can see your heart, even though the pain from what happened in the past still lingers in your soul and heart. You remain steadfast in protecting true people who deserve it. Keep your promise. Honor your word to the very end. Never break your word. Now you are my follower, and I am your master. Whenever I ask for something, you will come to me, Issei-kun. I promise to be a good master to you, unlike your former master who didn't value you and didn't see your true worth or the potential within you. I see I wasn't wrong to give you the chance to live and show who you truly are. Even though I was busy watching over your new life in this world, I can see the kindness and loyalty in your heart won't change no matter what. And that you have real people who deserve to be protected and who will protect you. Although I would punish them severely for entering my domain, as you promised, you made a deal with me, and you can't betray me now or ever. Do you understand what I mean, Issei-kun? The chestnut-haired man nodded earnestly. He owed Persephone a great debt for saving his life and helping him awaken his potential. And it was something he had to repay his life and for trespassing in her domain without her consent. He knew she was not like the shadows of his past. Since Persephone is an ancient deity, the terms of the agreement or the taboo must always be strictly followed. It is a promise that an ancient deity must not break, no matter what. Therefore, one must not lie or hesitate, as these are the conditions of the contract. If anyone doubted her words or lied for even a second, they would die instantly, deemed unfit to fulfill the contract, and would suffer a punishment worse than entering the underworld, especially for lying to an important deity to her face. The chestnut-haired boy acted well, which is why the contract was completed without problems, giving his word and his life to ensure the conditions were met. These conditions had already been stipulated, just as Persephone had forgiven the rule Issei and his companions broke by entering Persephone's territory. And the chestnut-haired boy would repay the debt he owed Persephone for helping him bring him into this world and preventing him from falling into the abyss, where he wouldn't have survived had he fallen in the first place. And since he had already made the contract, he couldn't go back on his word. He had no intention of doing so or reneging on his promise. He knew that Persephone wasn't like those who had betrayed him, because if she had wanted to kill him, she would have done so from the beginning. But she didn't, knowing she had the opportunity. It meant she was a good goddess, one who followed the rules and maintained order. Issei knew his destiny was to die the moment those who betrayed him threw him into the abyss. And yet Persephone changed his fate, seeing that he deserved the opportunity to prove what he was capable of, rather than let him die as if he were nothing, without giving him the chance to live, express himself, or make mistakes. That's why the chestnut tree is willing to accept the consequences, protect his loved ones, and repay his debt to Persephone for giving him this opportunity to have the life he could never have in his past life. To complete the bargain, the woman released his chin, and marks resembling magical writing appeared on the chestnut-haired man's face like purple flames. At first, it caused him great pain, something he hadn't felt since becoming immortal. It was the mark of Persephone, which made him her follower and servant. At the same time, it adapted his body to the underworld and its miasma, negative and corrupting energy, to prevent him from becoming corrupted and damaging his soul. Something surprised the chestnut-haired man when he saw his hair turn black after using the demonic energy Persephone gave him. The marks on his face disappeared, and his hair returned to its brown color. The most noticeable change that remained were his eyes, which went from being honey-colored to a bright, intense blood red. As the servant of the goddess of the underworld, the place returned to normal, and the chestnut-haired man fainted. The entire area then shifted, appearing as a safe zone, seemingly an intermediate floor between the supposed second and third floors. The chestnut-haired boy awoke to a gentle shake from Cross and the sound of the others' worried voices. The others no longer knew what had happened between him and Persephone. They only knew the place had changed, and they all awoke in that empty room that seemed like a safe intermediate zone between floors of the tower. And when they saw that the chestnut tree didn't wake up, they thought something bad had happened to it. The chestnut-haired boy woke up, much to the delight of the others. They hugged him, happy that he was alright, though surprised by his change in eye color. Although he didn't want to lie, he had to keep his deal with Persephone a secret so as not to worry the others and to remain focused on the mission. I only explain how I managed to speak with Persephone and pass a test without her explaining what the test was so that she would let them go without serious consequences. Because they were in her territory without permission, due to the tower's actions, she had brought them to that floor in the first place. Everyone calmed down a little when they saw Issei was alright and everything ended well without further problems. And he wouldn't have to face a goddess to the death since she was the only one who could help them learn more details about what they were facing. Their chances of winning this war would be higher with Persephone on their side since they could communicate with her and find out more about what was happening within the seal of the Monster King. They asked what the change in his eye color had to do with it. He said it must be a side effect of being in the underworld or some ability awakened by the test Persephone gave him. He would discover something later on, after all. The others didn't ask, thinking that must be the reason why the brunette had red eyes. Although Issei didn't like to lie, he had to keep this a secret for now. It was something between Persephone and him, and he didn't want his companions to get into trouble because of him. When the time was right, he would tell them everything, but for now, he couldn't. He had to wait for that day to arrive. For now, she had to keep the secret and focus on her mission, and together with everyone else, win this war and defeat the Monster King. Although it was difficult, it wasn't impossible. Even with everything against them, they wouldn't lose, and they wouldn't die. And they wouldn't let innocent people die in this war. Chapter 18. After our protagonist met Persephone and became her servant, a week has passed since the chestnut-haired boy was with his team in the dungeon. Thanks to Persephone, he can train day and night using his mind to hone his new abilities. However, Persephone clarified that his power depends on his emotions, as he could lose control if he overdoes it or experiences strong emotions like anger or utter despair, and he must remain calm. Persephone herself was surprised that the chestnut-haired boy hadn't yet recovered his memories of the past. But it was better that he didn't remember something like that. With his new abilities, he could easily lose control if he suddenly recalled something painful. Besides, the chestnut-haired boy's power is gradually increasing with each training session. According to Persephone, he'll soon be able to use teleportation between floors, allowing him to easily travel to different floors, but only to floors he's previously been on. This would be useful in case he's in danger. Now the chestnut-haired boy was with his companions walking on the third floor, which was a very strange jungle. At first, he was meditating while they had a special camp with barriers to avoid being detected or attacked by any enemy or monster. The chestnut-haired boy was exploring the area when he was attacked by a strange creature. It looked white and somewhat small, but not as small as a dog, being a white ferret. Instead of paws, it had sharp blades like a mantis. Its tail was also long. It seemed to turn into smoke, but at the tip was a long, large, sharp black blade. The creature seemed cute but also dangerous. The chestnut-haired man managed to dodge the creature's attack, engaging in hand-to-hand combat, though he admitted it was dangerous. He'd seen it cut through rocks and trees like butter, so it was dangerous. Remembering something, Persephone told him that some creatures could be tamed if they were defeated, and others were complete monsters without conscience, only thinking of annihilating everything. His passion was to kill them at all costs, leaving them no trace. The way the creature moved suggested it possessed consciousness and its own thoughts. It moved with skill, knowing precisely when to attack and when to retreat from the chestnut tree. He managed to immobilize the creature by entangling it with its own tail, thus taming the thing. Seeing its defeat against the chestnut tree, the creature allowed him to complete the contract. This being the chestnut-haired man, he tamed his first creature from the abyss. Besides discovering that the beasts he tamed would evolve with him, he no longer thought that could happen. Seeing the creature already docile, the chestnut-haired man took it in his arms. The creature didn't resist, shrinking to the size of a cat and climbing onto the chestnut-haired man's shoulder. Issei. You're kind of cute, but also dangerous. Thinking about a name for you, little one, would have been a shame. It would have been a shame if I'd finished you off. You're so elusive, even for me it was hard to catch you. Let's go to the others so they can meet you. As he left for the camp after a long explanation of what happened and to avoid Cross trying to slit the ferret's throat, the girls took care of the strange ferret and the other beasts of Issei were happy to have a new companion. Cross. Nyson, are you sure? It's good that you have a magical beast, a creature from the abyss, we don't know what it is. Even though you've tamed it, it seems dangerous. Issei. I understand your concern, Cross. As my skills have improved, I can now tame beasts in the dungeon, depending on the bond I have with them. And perhaps this little one knows how we can get out of this floor and what creatures are in this place. Hassiel. Nyson has a good point honestly, but we have to be alert, we don't know what else is in this jungle. Brumph. That's possible, we could get something like on floor 1. Cecilia. Oh, it could be worse. Yui. We don't know for sure, that's why we must be alert. So after a while, they all broke camp, packing their belongings into their magic bags. As they walked, the place was vast and expansive. A tremor shook the ground and everyone was on high alert. The ground cracked open, scattering them to different parts of the jungle. If it weren't for their individual abilities, they would have been badly injured. Brumph managed to catch Cecilia in his arms while Yui stopped as best she could, throwing her shield and enveloping them all in a protective barrier, managing to cushion their impact. Yui. Are you girls okay? Brumph. If we're okay. Cecilia. Yes, I'm fine, thanks Grumph, but we got separated from the boys. But apparently the strange ferret ended up staying with them because of the commotion. Yui. Okay, I didn't expect that. Issei sensei's new magical beast will end up with us in this weird place. Cecilia. Is there any way to get back up where we fell? Grumph. The place is too unstable to climb, even if we used wind magic to fly it would be dangerous. We don't know what caused the collapse, and the boys fell somewhere else too, so we're not sure we'll find them if we manage to climb back up there. Yui. That's very true. Since we fell from a high place, it's possible we can find them if we move forward and try to get out of here before this place collapses again and we end up trapped with no way out. Cecilia. It's true, now I think about it, this strange ferret is Issei sensei's new magical beast. It's possible that because of their bond, he can track it and find the others. Brumph. That's true, although I never thought I'd have to follow a beast from the abyss. Yui. We have no other choice. It's possible that a large monster caused the collapse, so if we go up to look for clues, we would be in danger and at risk of being attacked by other monsters. The others nodded at what the dark-haired girl said, following the strange ferret that would lead them to the others. Little by little he went deeper and deeper into the jungle, it getting darker, except for some strange plants and fungi that glowed with colors. Cecilia. I don't like this place, it's very strange, it gives me a bad feeling. Brumph. I agree with Cecilia. Yui. Don't lose focus, girls, we could be attacked at any moment. When the girls saw a strange-looking lake, they planned to fly across it using wind magic. But the ferret intervened, signaling them not to go into the water. It was dangerous. The girls moved away from the water when they saw a beast approaching to hunt some fish, but suddenly the beast was grabbed by the neck and roughly submerged. In the darkness and with the splashing, they didn't see what happened, but they knew it wasn't good. For a moment the water turned red, revealing that only the beast's head remained, floating in the water, and its body must have been devoured by some monster in the water. Suddenly, the head was eaten by a creature that emerged from the water, a kind of blue scaly lizard with phosphorescent pink spots and shiny parts on its body, with various parts of its body like spikes. Its eyes glowed yellow. It was large, the size of a horse. The girls hesitated a bit upon seeing the monster, but they didn't back down. That ugly thing was blocking their safe path to the other side of the lake. To make matters worse, more of those creatures emerged from the lake, 10 in total, and now they completely blocked the way. They could no longer retrace their steps, let alone move forward. Their only option was to fight them. They couldn't fly and escape from there because if those things jumped out of the water they could cover a great distance. Their physical abilities were not normal in water and on land, they could only fight in this problematic and dangerous situation. Cecilia prepared her bow and arrows for this, and Yui prepared her sword and shield, and Grumpf bumped fists that brought out phosphorescent green girls. Yui. There's no other option but to fight. Are you ready, girls? Cecilia. Always ready until the end. Grumpf. Even though there are many of them, we mustn't back down or give up fighting, girls. Let's show these underdeveloped lizards what we're made of. The others nodded and devised a plan. They shouldn't let them into the water. If they were aquatic creatures, they shouldn't have many advantages on land for long. So, each one dispersed unseen. Grumpf began to move to a safe part of the lake, and bumping her fists with magna, she touched the ground. They created a rock dome to prevent the creatures from returning to the lake, and if there were more inside the water, they had to suffocate them. Cecilia launched a white fire arrow at an opening in the dome. The dome glowed red hot, the water boiling rapidly, and many of the creatures desperately pounded against it, trying to break it. Meanwhile, those outside the water tried to break the dome, but they couldn't get close without being burned by how hot it was. The girls took advantage of this to surprise them. They were outside the dome. Managing to finish off a few, but the others, already alert, attacked Yui too hard. One attacked her from behind, tackling her and sending her crashing into a nearby rock. Grumpf and Cecilia. Yui. They were worried about their friend but couldn't get close. Grumpf was struggling with three at the same time, and Cecilia was dodging and attacking, avoiding those onslaughts from the monsters. The dark-haired woman stood up in pain, cracking some bones. That really hurt. Yui. Ah. Damn it, that hurt. I felt like a bloody bull had tackled me. Damn lizard, now I'm really angry. I'll turn you into diced fish. The dark-haired woman, enveloping herself in her magna, used her blessing to send something. Cecilia and Grumpf managed to shake off their opponents and create a double barrier of magna to prevent anything from happening, knowing that when her friend was truly angry, she couldn't hold back. Meanwhile, the ferret, seeing the chaos approaching, didn't hesitate and entered the barrier with her. Watching the monsters with concern as the black-haired magna rose. Yui. 1,000 swords fallen from the sky. So that the monsters would see with fear 1,000 swords appear in the sky, several shone like light and others were as dark as night itself, then an explosion would be seen throughout the place, as the swords fell like missiles at the enemies, the lake would be seen destroyed and dry like a mini desert, some bodies would be seen burning so much that with a single touch, they would turn to ashes. Cecilia, Grumpf, and the ferret all stared blankly at the destruction Yui had wrought. They knew she was no pushover. She held the title of Black Knight of Light. A truly explosive, destructive, and powerful combination if the individual could master it. After calming down from the shock and healing their wounds, they continued on their way to find their companions. Elsewhere with the boys, the three managed to save themselves from the tremendous fall. Cassiel was able to save himself thanks to his wings, Cross had his own blessing of fire and was able to make it look like wings of fire, and on Issei's side, he had black demon wings on his back, managing to fall safely, all three of them. Cross. What a tremendous fall, I could have done badly. Cassiel. At least we're okay. Issei. I feel much calmer knowing that, guys. The chestnut-haired man checked his beasts, and all three were fine, but the strange ferret was not with them, much less the girls. Cross. And the girls. I asked seriously, worried about them. Issei. The terrain must have separated us due to the fall, and made us end up on the other side of this strange jungle. Cassiel. It's very likely that's the case, I hope you're alright. Issei. They're strong, they're a team. We have to trust them. Everything will be alright and we'll find them safe. We have to move forward. If some monster caused the collapse, we can't just stay here and wait for whatever caused it to come after us. Cross and Cassiel nodded, following the chestnut-haired man as they left. The man was guided by his connection to the ferret. If the ferret was with the girls, finding it would lead him to them at the same time. This reassured the man, knowing his students weren't lost. They followed their walk through the place seeing many rare plants and fungi and the occasional rare carnivorous word. When suddenly the chestnut-haired boy and his brothers were separated from each other to see two large creatures whose footsteps made the ground tremble. It must have been those two things fighting that caused the collapse that separated them from the girls. Vihia was a kind of colossal purple snake with touches of purple and bright yellow eyes, phosphorescent yellow lines came out of the middle part of its body, its scales gave off purple rays around it, as well as its predatory gaze. The next one was a kind of humanoid plant. It looked like a humanoid carnivorous plant with insect-like features, and its arms resembled blades like a mantis's, and it had parts like roots and a tree-like structure, and a kind of stinger-like helmet on its head. Cross. But what an ugly thing that is. Issei. I have no idea, Cross, but we can't get overconfident. We have to immobilize one of them and take care of the other. We can't fight both of them at the same time. We could be at a serious disadvantage because of their abilities. The two chestnut-haired brothers nodded, plotting their plan to deal with the snake first and then the humanoid insect. They managed to create a triple-layered barrier around the insect so it wouldn't interfere with their fight with the snake. They had to dodge the snake's tail, which was destroyed all along its path as it tried to pierce the snake's skin, but it was too tough. Cross. His skin is very tough, my arrows don't pierce him. Hassiel. Not even my barriers are there, it's like colliding with another very hard sharp weapon that even throws sparks. Issei. Keep trying, he must have some kind of shock absorption. At some point his stamina will run out. The blonde and the orange-haired one nodded, increasing their attacks even more, dodging the beams without giving that thing a break. Cross. Damn it, my arrows are gone. If I use magic energy arrows, I'll use up too much energy too quickly and we still have the other monster. There's no other option but to fight the snake with our fists. Issei. Increase the level of your attacks, guys. Don't let that thing rest for even a moment. Hassiel. I'll take care of that. Cross. Consider it done. He lunged at the snake with his fists ablaze, punching it in the mouth and breaking one of its fangs, causing the snake to crash into a tree. Cross. Ha. Take that. Issei. Well done, Cross, you discovered his weak point. Hassiel. From what we can see on the outside, his skin absorbs blows without suffering damage, but on the inside he is weak to attacks. Issei. We have to make him open his mouth. Cross. But his body is a problem. Issei. Daha, Callum, don't let him move. Two tattoos were visible on the chestnut-haired man's arm. One of a phoenix and the other of a salamander. The two summoned beasts emerged, appearing as a wave of fire that reached the snake, which was the chestnut-haired man's phoenix. When the snake saw the small salamander, anyone would have thought it would be food for the purple snake. It would have picked up the little creature, but what the snake didn't expect was to witness the salamander's evolution, seeing a kind of reptilian lion. The snake didn't have time to react properly because of the surprise of seeing the little salamander evolve, and receiving a kick in the stomach made it fall into some rocks and large trees, getting stuck. Issei. Good job guys, leave the rest to us. Keep an eye on the other monster so it doesn't get free. The two beasts nodded, fleeing to the other side of the battlefield to watch the other monster that was banging on the barrier, trying unsuccessfully to break it. Cross. Finally this thing is trapped, we have to give it the final blow. Hassiel. It's for the best. If she manages to break free, we won't have another chance to kill her. Issei. We have to give it our all. Thus the three raised their magna to launch a single attack. An arrow was enveloped in fire, resembling a phoenix. With Cassiel's holy power, the arrow became sharper, and a sphere of demonic energy, blood red with black, was surrounding it. The arrow struck the snake in the mouth, causing an explosion that destroyed part of the area, leaving the snake's body wounded and dead. Cross. If we finally succeeded, that thing is dead. Issei. It's not time to celebrate, Cross, we still have another problem. Which is the insect plant monster. Hassiel. I'm with Nyson, this isn't over yet. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching, if you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day, bye.